What?
Okay, so just to let members of the public know that this is being recorded and will be posted via BIG at a future date. Welcome to the Curriculum Subcommittee meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 6th. We're going to go ahead and get started with minutes. We have two sets of minutes that we need to decide if we're going to vote and approve on them. The first one, I'd like to take them separately. The first one is the June 23rd meeting that we had talked about at our last meeting, and I believe folks had the time to make any edits. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about those minutes? Okay, does anybody want to make a motion for those minutes? I was not at that meeting, so I feel like maybe it should not be me. Barbara would make a motion. Can we get a second? Okay, I'll second them, and then we'll take a vote. Barbara?
Yes.
Okay, great. Helen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to abstain, Robin, from this particular vote because I wasn't there. And then we have the minutes from the September 29th meeting. That's the most recent meeting that we had a few weeks ago. Does someone want to make a motion? Barbara will make a motion. I will second that motion, and then we'll take a quick vote. Helen?
Yes.
I'll vote yes. Barbara?
Yes.
And Susan, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so that's the business piece out of the way, and I want to be really respectful of everyone's time. I want to thank Anthony Meyer and Hal Mason for joining us today at our Curriculum Subcommittee meeting to give us an update on the high school. We really appreciate and value your time. We know how busy you all are, and so we are very appreciative that you're able to come. I know how valuable that time is. Do you have any questions for us, Anthony or Hal, or do you want to get started?
I think we're ready to get started.
All right, great.
So I don't have slides for you, so I'll just, it'll be a lot of talking.
Okay.
I hope that's, it seems to be something the school committee is comfortable with.
Yeah, I would say, I'll say for myself as a member of this subcommittee, chair of the subcommittee and member of the school committee, I would rather we spend more time discussing than doing formal presentations and get, have the ability to discuss.
So I'll go through the list of what you asked us to talk about. So, the model that we have chosen is, of course, different than the K-8 for good reason. It's a very different institution, and the expectation and what we know we can deliver is very different. So, we're looking at delivering something that is a hybrid model beginning in a few weeks. But at the same time also is cognizant that there are going to be many kids who for many different reasons remain remote. And therefore we wanted to set something up that worked and could bridge both of those worlds, because we just felt it was artificial to try to create a separate world. We wouldn't be able to recreate the high school in that way, and we wouldn't have been able to staff it, and we don't think it would offer what we need. Whereas we think the model we've come up with, well, it certainly has some challenges and certainly creates some other issues for us. We think that the hybrid model that we're coming up with is going to give us a better approximation of what the regular Brookline High School is. So it involves a rotation. We'll have kids in for 3 days one week, 2 days the next week, depending on the cohort they're in. They'll meet in person with their teachers for 2 of those. So in the week where you're on 3, obviously the classes will meet Monday, Tuesday, one time with each class, and then on Wednesday, sort of a brief check-in with your teachers, a chance to get to catch up, to pick up assignments, to reinforce lessons, a short, but we're looking at a 25-minute session on those Wednesdays. And again, that's every other week that each cohort would have that. And then the other time you'd be remote into that class, where you'd be either on a Zoom, on a camera like this, or hopefully with a slightly better technology on an owl camera, or certainly with better microphones and speakers, so that, you know, we're not attempting to create two different worlds. We're attempting to create a world where a teacher is able to teach and do the instruction to the kids that are in front of them, and give something of the classroom experience to the kids who are at home. And, you know, this is going to look different, and it's going to look different in different classrooms, and we're okay with that. We understand that some of our teachers are going to be really comfortable in doing this and integrating that. We've already seen some of our ACE teachers are doing some of this. Some of our Excel teachers are doing some of this already. And, you know, it's different with different teachers. And that's, you know, that certainly was something that in the spring made everybody nervous. But we think that the coordinators are going to bring teachers along and create systems that work really well for using that technology and keeping classes together, so that it really feels like you're a part of that class. Like we don't want kids at the end, and this is again an important part of the model. We don't want kids in the end to feel as if, oh, I don't even know who those kids are that are in the, you know, the Monday, Tuesday cohort. We want them to feel as if they're part of that same class and have that experience. And maybe even by the springtime, we're able to bring everybody back together. Staffing implications are, of course,
Hal, sorry, Hal, do you mind if I just quick interrupt with I just want a couple quick, put a couple finer points on a couple of things. One, hi, everybody. Are we recorded on this, or do we just we're recording this, and then does this then go public? Okay, good. All right, well, that's important to note. As Suzanne knows, and Hal and I certainly do, some of the negotiations around teaching two groups of students simultaneously is certainly something that we're working on. What you're hearing from Hal is important, that we think that there will be some variance. And I think the important thing is to try to share with parents what that variant, you know, where will there be variance and where won't there be? And I totally understand that some parents and guardians, and frankly, school and district leaders, will be worried that we're back in a world of March. And I don't see that. I both totally understand that concern, given how frustrating it was, and believe that we're in far better shape than we were in the spring. Having an outward facing schedule, a very good schedule that Hal created, having attendance, having grades, puts us in different territory. But how we sort of keep connected with the kids who aren't engaging in live instruction or live learning, that will be a challenge, and some of it will solve with technology, and some of it will be somewhat optional for teachers. We believe good practice will rise to the top, as it always does in schools. So Hal, that's just what I think. I wanted to make sure that we were, you know, speaking pretty candidly about that. Helen?
Just want to, this is a clarification question because I'm not exactly sure I understand. Before COVID, before the pandemic, we had a schedule with 7
Blocks that met 4 times a week. Yep.
And all that. And now we're changing to 3 days a week in, 2 days a week out. Will students still have 7 blocks of each course?
So there's still 7 blocks in the schedule, but instead of those meeting essentially 4 times a week, those are now meeting 3 times a week. So one of the things that we looked at in the schedule was, what is the experience like for kids, especially when they're in that remote world of sitting through 6 classes a day on Zoom.
Right.
Some of us have experienced 6 Zooms in a day, and we're going to all say that's not the best day.
I can pull my hair out.
Pull your hair out, exactly. So we didn't want to put kids in a situation where, you know, anybody could manage it for a day, but if we're looking at 170 days of doing 6 Zooms in a day, it just doesn't make sense. And we had already moved in this direction. As you remember, we had changed our schedule for last year, and that schedule involved and one of the prime motivators behind changing that schedule last year was that we didn't want kids to have 5 or 6 classes every day, that we wanted there to be 4 or 5 classes every day. Whereas in the old world, so it's going back 2 years, 3 days a week, you had 6 classes a day, 2 days a week, you had 5 classes. In the new world, where we moved to a 10-day schedule, without getting too complicated, it was a 4 or 5 day, 5 blocks per student per day. We thought it was just important in terms of the time in class. We thought it was important about getting homework prepared for the next day. So we were already moving in that direction. And now thinking about what the experience was like and what we learned from the spring was that it was just too much for people to try to do that 5 or even the 5 or the 6 block day. And so now it's a 3 or a 4 block day, except for the Wednesday check-in day. Wednesday, you're racing through 7 blocks. But again, those are, we're thinking of that in a very different way than the traditional instruction. And so now, of course, the difference is time. And we're doing 2 things with all that extra time that we have, since we're not running, let's say, the 7 classes 4 times a week. The classes are 80 minutes long now. So again, we're not expecting teachers to be doing full 80-minute Zooms. A lot of them started out that way just because they were, I think, so anxious to get back into the class, and because it was, people are catching up on things from last year, and people are,
setting up routines and
setting things up, right, and expectations. But we think that's going to evolve into something that's more like you're teaching your lesson, and that might be a 50-minute lesson. And then it's, okay, I'm going to break you into groups now, and you're going to go off in these groups, and I'm going to check in with each of the breakout rooms that are here. I'm going to check in with my remote kids that are over in this breakout room, and you're going to be working. So it's not going to be, we don't expect anybody to be doing 80 minutes of stand and deliver teaching. That's just not, it's not good. It's not good teaching anyway. So, that's the big change, Helen, in terms of what the year is going to look like and the experience. And again, that's for kids and for teachers. It's hard for a teacher to be racing through, I'll have a couple of teachers that might have 4 in a row on one day, but for the most part, it's going to be more broken up so that they're preparing each day. I would hope for 2 or 3 classes at most in a given day. Jennifer, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I'm just trying to visualize like the kids who are in versus the kids who might be out. And we may not know all of this information right at this moment. I'm just sort of looking to see what direction we might be heading in. So if kids are in Monday, Tuesday, that particular week, instead of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, will there be in their class, if they're live, will there also be students coming in remotely into that class, or is it going to be, yes, so it'll be happening simultaneously. So some kids will be coming into that class remotely, some kids will be in the building, and on another day, you might be the kid coming in remotely while other kids are in the building. Is that accurate?
Exactly, yes.
So how is that 3 and 2? That's
3 days and 2 days. So you're in for Monday. Well, the first cohort is in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
But
Second
Wednesday
cohort's
is,
in Thursday, Friday, and then it switches the following week. The following week, that cohort A is in just Monday, Tuesday, and cohort B is in Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
but Wednesday you said is the check-in day with all 7 periods. So how
Correct.
do you do that?
Quickly.
But just one cohort is in, that's the key
cohort,
piece.
right.
Just one cohort. And
Just
so
running from class to class.
one week.
Yes, you're running from class to class, but again, that's valuable time. To be able to have that 25-minute check-in time with a teacher can be valuable when you didn't get something that happened in the lesson. You have a couple of checking questions. It's, you might look at it as a help period. I think teachers are going to use it in very different ways. And I can't predict exactly now how that will get used, but I'm pretty sure that it will evolve into something that is useful for teachers. And it may not be that they require every kid to be there for the whole 25 minutes. It might just be, okay, from what I saw on your homework from Monday, I need 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to come with me and I'm going to go over that concept one more time over the next 15 minutes. So it's almost like it's an after school help session type of thing. That may be one way that it evolves. It may be a little mini lesson. Certainly, the people that are most excited about that might be the world language teachers, because they lead that drill and repeat and they want that extra time, and 25 minutes might be a really good time for them to go over a little mini lesson or just a reinforcement lesson from what happened earlier in the week. And so that's how they're going to pick up that time. So it's, you're getting 2 live sessions per week on one week and 1 live session per week on the following week, depending on your cohort. Barbara?
last night at the Brookline Education Foundation, Jim Marini was talking about some, well, I think he called them owls.
You did.
Cameras that followed teachers around the room and made it look much more, looking at the teacher online was much more like looking at her or him in the classroom. And I think he said they were going to be used at the high school. Can you talk a little bit about that? How
Well,
that'll be used?
Sure.
It certainly represents a huge need, Barbara, but I think Hal can talk about the theory and then we can talk about the reality of where we are with owl cameras at this point in time.
Yeah, so the owl is a huge improvement and upgrade over this camera, right? So this camera is the one that certainly will be the default. Will be the, you know, if you're at home and I'm here in my class teaching a lesson, you're going to follow along and I'll have it aimed at the board. And if I'm doing if I pull up a slide deck or pull something up, certainly you could, you know, I'll have you go on me in speaker view, or I'll just share screen and you'll be seeing whatever I'm sharing up on my board. And I'll be teaching over here, but you'll see me walking off screen and you'll lose track of me. And the mic is okay on a Mac, but it's not great. And it's obviously a different experience when you're there and again, a walk off screen and you're a ninth grade student. It's a little bit harder to follow. You know, we're looking for something that makes it easier for you to track, and you're not seeing what I'm seeing. You're not seeing the kids here in the class. What the owl does, it's just a little cylindrical camera. It looks sort of like a bowling pin, and it's got a 360-degree fisheye lens in it. And so it also has some very good software that I can set, or I can just let it operate on its own, and it's gonna triangulate onto me. So as I move over here, it hears my voice and it's gonna rotate the camera to find me, and it's gonna show me. And when student Anthony Meyer in the back of the classroom starts talking and asks a question, I will stay here because it knows that I'm the main voice, but a separate part of the view. And again, I would instruct all students to have it on speaker view. You would then see a split camera. You'd see me in 1/3 of the window, say, and a new lens, let's say, would open up on student Anthony Meyer and pick up him. And again, it does this by triangulating on the voice. And it hears the voice, and then it says, oh, there's somebody else over here speaking, and it turns on and brings in student Anthony Meyer. And if student Janae Utaro is over here and she starts speaking, a third window opens up. So you could have 3 simultaneous things. I could also have a panorama, a 360-degree view of the room. And again, we think this is really important in bringing the class together. That's what we like so much about that technology. It's expensive.
They're $1,000 or so per unit. And so we have a test camera. And when we were talking about the potential model for a hybrid approach and for making sure that remote learning students were fully engaged, in July, we talked with Jim Marini and Casey Neo-Miller about this. And I think we've been talking about it all summer, the reality, you know, and they were excited to hear what were the obstacles. And I think this is an obstacle, and we're going to try to work with some of our parent partners to see what sort of support we can get. And, you know, I think that's a question for the district is,
Yes.
yeah.
I think it's something that we definitely need to look into, not just for the high school, but for the elementary schools too.
Yep.
And I think it's something that should come out of the COVID funding, whether it's the, you know, federal government, whether it's the town. I think it's something that this has just come up a couple days ago, the first time I heard about it, and I'm sorry we hadn't heard about it sooner, because I think it would have been helpful to know that, to try and start ordering them back in the summer rather than waiting till now. I don't know what the back.
They're manufactured in Somerville. The company is based out of Somerville. I say, I don't know what the factory is.
And there's a Brookline parent who owns it, huh?
That's the hope. Or we can learn the height of the fence and how we can get in there.
So, you know, and I think you're right. It's a COVID-related funding. And, you know, some of you have heard me say this in other contexts, but I think it's important. I think, you know, if we're going to create a successful model, we need to make sure that kids and teachers feel comfortable not being in school. That it's more important for us, I think, in our model for a kid to be, yeah, it's okay that I missed because I can just follow, Mr. Meyer's class on the owl. I'll just watch what's happening, and that's okay. And yeah, I don't know if this is a cough or what's happening in my throat. There's something there, but I'm comfortable staying home and watching this. Or Mr. Meyer says, I'm comfortable staying home today too because I'm not feeling great. This is something, a lot of teachers come in not feeling great, and that's no longer something that we can do as a town, as a school. It's just not sustainable. It would lead to outbreaks. And so if we're going to encourage kids to engage in class in that way, we need to present class in a way that is that does give the look and feel of being there.
Yeah.
It's not perfect. Obviously, if people would rather be in class, but we think the owl combined with a quality microphone, and the quality microphone is an easier ask. And again, with this, I say it's an easier ask. We don't have the money for it. You guys may be able to locate the funding for this, but we need to get some good, essentially, you're familiar with these. These are essentially conference room microphones. Little triangular microphones that have multi-directional, omnidirectional capability, pick up sound around the room, and while not bringing in the video and not really bringing you into the classroom, at least allow the sound to come to whoever is watching on Zoom.
Not individual microphones for the teacher, that sort of pack that you carry. And
no, it's more of like a room microphone.
Really? And that doesn't pick more ambient noise?
No, the ones that come out now are pretty good at isolating noise. I mean, I'm sure you could spend hundreds of dollars each and get some that have noise cancellation features on them. We've just experimented with a couple of USB ones off of Amazon. We had one, it was bad. We had one and the teachers report that it's great, that it picks up voices really distinctly from around the room and doesn't pick up fan noise and other noises coming in. And the kids at home report back to the teacher that they can clearly hear almost everybody in the room as long as they're facing toward where that is. And that would, of course, be, you'd have it somewhat proximate to the teaching location. So most kids, most of the time, would be facing that, and you could hear those voices.
Have you sent to Mary Ellen the numbers that you would need and the what it is you want? Because I think that would be important to start the process moving.
Yeah, we've discussed it with Jim and Casey. We've sent, I don't remember if we sent, certainly she's aware that we're looking at, looking for 100 of the OWL devices and probably a similar number of the microphone devices. So, but we can.
And that would cover every teacher in every class?
Every classroom.
No, if we're counting OLS, you'd probably need a little bit more. It depends on, there's some, I don't know that every teacher is going to embrace the OWL and use that. So even 100 might be more than we could use. But something north of 50 for sure, I think. And we think it's a great product. We think it's that people are going to use it. And the more people become comfortable with using it, the more people are going to want it.
Well, I think it's an investment also because,
Agreed.
In the future, a kid gets sick, the teacher can turn it on and,
Right.
The kid's there in the class.
I completely agree. I think this could be our reality for a couple of years where people may be where we're going to be actively encouraging kids to bang out sick at the slightest, which would, when my kid tells me that she's sick, I'm like, yeah, you're fine, go to school. And we can't do that. That's got to change. And this type of camera makes it much easier for kids to say, it's okay, I can get the schooling that I need just by logging in.
Okay, so Helen, is this something that should go, like I'd be interested in seeing sort of a request, like a memo request with numbers of microphones and OWL cameras, and whether that goes to Mary Ellen and/or Capital Subcommittee or whatever the appropriate chain is.
Yeah, and it may be finance, it may be capital, and I'm not sure. Susan, have you thought about this at all, where it might end up in?
I have. Couple thoughts. We have COVID money that we need to spend by the end of the year.
Right.
So I was on the phone earlier this week with Jim and Mary Ellen on sort of the different moving pieces to try to figure out which ones make the most sense to put against which pots of money. And so I think the best answer would be is if this went against the COVID money that has to get spent before the end of the year. I don't know what that balance is going to look like. I don't know how much is going to be left in that account. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's,
Can you hear me? Yes or no?
Yes.
now it's good. Before
Yeah,
the-
now you sound good.
Um,
Your voice is a little.
Yes. So the answer is yes. I think we're going to talk about it at finance on Thursday. But if we can put it against the COVID money, that's probably better. We're just going to have to see.
Do you need any more paperwork or numbers, Susan, in order to move forward with this from anyone at the high school in order to make forward progress?
I don't think she heard you.
Sorry, Susan, you're muted now. I was just asking if there's anything else that you need for paperwork from the high school in order to move the conversation forward at finance.
We're in this strange moment where Susan suddenly doesn't know how to use the technology that she probably knew before.
We're going to add one more microphone apparently to the
Yeah.
allocation.
Sorry, what happened was I went from the earbud to the computer.
And it got
It's not
lost.
interesting. What were you asking?
I just wanted to know if there's any other paperwork that you might need from the high school in order to get forward progress on moving forward with purchase. If you're meeting Thursday, I know that's short notice, but you know, high school knows pretty much what it wants and kind of what it costs. Like, what do we do to move on this?
So I think there's sort of so we have town school partnership tomorrow. We have finance on Thursday, and we have capital next week. And so I think that, and then we have town meeting coming up. So just sort of in terms of order of operations, trying to line things up, I think what we need is the comprehensive view of technology needs, even if we're just guessing, and that this is part of that. So this is kind of packaged in with I assume there are additional help desk resources that are needed. I'm assuming there are a bunch of different things. So I think what would be helpful is if we could kind of look at that as a package and say, here's how we are going to achieve our educational objectives through technology. It'll be much easier to do that than sort of one-off, I think. So I've mentioned that to Jim. I don't know how far that's gotten through the senior staff process, but yes, I think this is sort of the time is now to try to move some of this. And if we only have information on some of it, then so be it. But the more comprehensive a picture we can put together for town meeting as an explanation of what we need, the better.
Well, I think this is a huge start, and I would encourage the elementary principals, and I'm not sure who we get to do that, to also get a number of them for the elementary buildings. You know, there may be a class that's out at a time, you know, or something like that, and this could be a way to manage that. So, I mean, I don't think we should just do the high school.
Yeah, so Helen, to your point, Michelle Herman should be joining us at some point during the meeting. And so this is something I've tagged here just to sort of bring up and say, is there interest? Is there, you know, I'm all for buying things, and we just want to make sure that that we'll be utilizing them. And so maybe everyone's not comfortable with that, or number of reasons. We might decide that, you know, some classrooms are more appropriate fit than others. And so we can just get some firmer numbers on what that looks like and send it to finance and to capital. I mean, I just think the more we have in paper and the more people we put that paper in front of them, the more likely we are to get that.
And the sooner you'll get it. I mean, that's the other thing.
Oh, yeah, these are popular items. A lot of schools have been buying these, so they're in short supply.
Has Dave Janakakis sort of sourced this at all to see?
I don't know.
We haven't communicated.
We've done a little handling of it at the town hall level. I don't know if she's made it to Dave to talk about it.
Scott Moore was advising us a little bit, but it was more just describing our options anyway. That was we were working with Scott for a little while. But Jennifer, the point you make, I think, is really important, and that is not our entire faculty and staff will not be using OWL cameras. And so what I don't want the district to buy 100 cameras if they're not going to be utilized. And I'm not sure And I'm not sure whether the K-8 principals will want them in the K-5 classrooms. It may be that they will. It may be that they feel like it's more something that some middle school teachers will use, but that whole notion of teaching two groups of students simultaneously is an area we're very much working on with our faculty and staff, but we believe that technology is so good and that we have many teachers who will be ready to use it and share with their colleagues. So just, I think Hal and I can come up with a more, a kind of compromise number of what we think in terms of microphones and OWL cameras.
Yep.
We'll also seek some help from the PTO for more piloting of the cameras in the weeks to come.
So I think it would be great if we could maybe segue into some of, and I know we sort of went down another path, Hal, and you were going to start talking about staffing implications and budget implications, and I think this is part of it. And maybe when we come back to some more of the budget, we'd be interested, I think, in other ed tech kind of things. Are there software purchases? Are there, just sort of that. So if you want to maybe, if we could pick up back with like the staffing or budget, whatever you want to do next.
Yeah, staffing, I thought we'd do next. We will need a little bit more staff. We don't envision going out and hiring new math teachers and science teachers. We think we need adults. We're going to need more adult presence around the building. Part of the schedule that we have involves lengthy passing time between blocks, and that's for a couple of really good reasons. Kids need a break, and kids will need a break, and kids will need mass breaks, and kids will need to take long routes to get from class to class if they're moving or going to, and we don't want congestion, we don't want crowding, we want to be able to space things out. And so we have a long passing time. We're going to need adult presence around kids when they're passing, when they're at lunch, which will be outside under the tents or spaced out in hallways or in the Slunts Gymnasium, all over the place. We're going to need adults. We also need, and this, we're not sure if this is going to be what we're calling building subs, which we've been working on, which Town Hall has been working on for us, or if it's going to be paraprofessional support that'll be doing this for kids that are taking a class. They're here in person, but they're taking a class that's remote. So there'll be some classes, for example, for a number of reasons, the teacher is out sick, a teacher's been quarantined for 2 weeks, then that teacher is still able and can teach, but is not able to be in the building. We still want that teacher to teach. I mean, we think that's a much better model for us than calling in a substitute teacher or handing a kid a pack of worksheets. We want to be able to facilitate that. And so, we have spaces identified. We're getting the ventilation assurances that we need for those spaces, but then we need to have an adult there in the room with that cohort with that group of, I'm going to use the word cohort again, the group of kids who are taking a remote class. And so we've identified some spaces around the building. We just need personnel to come in and be with those kids. Some of that could be, like I said, paraprofessional support, could be, substitute teacher support, could be take a lot of forms, but it's personnel for sure. We'll need additional numbers of people. I won't be able to assign teachers into those spaces. It's going to have to be additional staff that comes in for that.
And Hal, I was just going to say on the substitute front, just so everybody knows, we have met multiple times with Joe Russo and are coming up with a plan that meshes with what the district is doing across the pre-K to 12 continuum. So Joe has been great, and he also met with our Unit B coordinators today to talk about leaves and to talk about potential for remote work for some high school staff. So just a bit of a tangent, but related to staffing.
Right, and so staffing, of course, is also budget. So that is, there's a need for additional budget for that staffing at whatever level it is. It's not a huge ask in terms of FTEs, but it certainly is, a number of people. And again, if we're on budget, technology is, we're looking at a decent number for technology. It's not just the owls and the mics. There's other tech needs that we have that we have no budget for. a quick example would be my wellness teachers who, are teaching yoga. And if you're teaching yoga, the screen that you have in front of you with these tiny little images is not a great way to be observing form and observing the kids taking your yoga class. Instead, you want to have a much larger monitor. And my wellness teachers have been some of the best and most innovative work in terms of developing the curriculum and changing. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in a bit. But saying, okay, what does wellness look like in this remote environment, and how can we teach it well? And immediately they said, what I need to teach this well is a better camera and a bigger monitor so I can watch what's happening and see what's happening with 20 kids at the same time doing yoga or doing lifetime activities or whatever the program is that they're working on. Again, we're not talking about a large ask here, but we're outfitting, it's the wellness teachers, it's the dance teachers, it's things that are necessarily probably going to stay remote for a while, and they need that little enhancement with technology. So there's some additional budget asked that we have for that. You asked us to look at the needs for this year and for next year.
Just one quick question. Is some of that available at Big?
Yeah, they don't have a ton of extra equipment. I mean, they have some large screens up in the red lab and the blue lab, but I don't know that, the monitors.
That can't be used in this instance.
It's possible. It's possible. I can ask Kathy and Corbin if that's possible. It's a one-time outlay that we're looking at. Then, we're talking about monitors that are $200, not large sums for these types of things. I mean, it's not a giant TV. It's a much, a 30-inch computer monitor they can plug in. With Zoom, you're able to keep one picture here that kids can see, so the kid can see the dance instructor, let's say, in their one screen, and yet she can see the 20 kids in the class on the other screen next to it.
Okay.
So I would just encourage us to, whatever we can get in the form of a request to finance or capital or wherever it needs to go on paper, the sooner the better. I just think that, I'd love to see if these are what we think we need to do a great comprehensive program that's really robust, then I would say the sooner we get it into the hands of educators to use with kids, the better. So whatever we can put in. Do you have an estimate of FTEs that you think we'll need on the staffing piece?
The minimum that we were looking for would be 4 additional people here at the 115 end, and at least 2 additional people over at OLS. So 6 would be the minimum. Obviously, more would be more helpful. We have our 3 security paras, and they've been great. They've been in since the beginning, since we started doing distribution. And they've been terrific, and they've been back and forth between the campus, but mainly over at OLS because that's where our kids are for now. That's a position that we have long advocated could even be expanded, because with the campus is so busy for such a long period of the day, additional people in that line could be really useful.
There's just one other question. Any other technology things that are on your mind, like Wi-Fi or I don't even know what else, for the people who are remote, I worry a lot about students who don't have great broadband, that we might need hotspots from us. I'm also sort of thinking of different groups of students, special education, students, low-income students who don't have great access to bandwidth, or even educators who are really in a bad spot in terms of bandwidth. So help us think about the rest of those pieces also.
Yeah, I would defer to Scott for a lot of those questions. I think he's got his hands on a lot more of that and would know, or maybe even steps. That's not where we've been hearing about the tech problem on the Wi-Fi bandwidth, and that's more within the school sometimes. Yesterday, this was hopefully just a one-off. We had the whole network was down here in the morning, and if had this been a month from today, or a month and 3 days from today, and I had a full building here and I lost all my Wi-Fi, then my owl becomes an actual bowling pin instead of just looking like a bowling pin. So that's concerning, but IT was on it. They had someone here, he was looking into it, and within half an hour after being alerted to the problem, they had resolved it and we were good. The bigger concerns over at OLS. At OLS, we have a number of weird things that happen with the network, where just sometimes the network will, in some rooms, the network just fizzles. And I don't know if it's because of the physical size of the building and the physical characteristics of the building, or if there's some more technological problem that happens over at OLS. But we've had, you know, just from our first return group that's over there now, we've heard of numerous instances where their Wi-Fi, or kids using the Chromebooks there, are having much more difficulty than the kids who are at home. The kids who are Zooming into the class, they're not having the issues with the Chromebooks or with the Macs, obviously. It's more in the building. So that,
sorry, Hal, but it becomes an increasingly important issue when we go from 83 kids in the old Lincoln School to 250 a day, all, you know, more or less on Zoom. We're worried. And so we haven't communicated directly, or at least Hal, I don't think since yesterday we've communicated with the new, I think we have an interim CTO in the town. So Kevin Stokes' replacement, we haven't communicated with that person, but we do need to assess our bandwidth for sure.
yeah, and again, and we don't know if it's a bandwidth issue. We don't know if there's something structural with the way the network is set up at OLS. We're just not sure. We just know that it's concerning, and it, you know, it seems as if around most of the campus, the ability to download and keep video moving has been great and hasn't been an issue. We don't know what the upload bandwidth is going to be. And with the OWL, you're putting a lot of demand. And if I'm using 50 OWLs simultaneously, that's a lot of upload demand. And that's something that we certainly would never have stressed as much as we're going to once we start using technology like that. Even uploading the upload bandwidth for a lot of voice is something we just don't do. Most of the strain or the testing of that network would be in download capability, and it's designed for download. So we just don't know. We haven't been able to do that type of testing to make sure that we can operate those cameras simultaneously and still have a good seamless experience.
So this is a larger question for anyone who might know. What is the next step? How do we connect the dots so that we make sure that the new town person, or is this a Scott Moore question? How do we make sure that somebody is evaluating and assessing the broadband capabilities that we have? Can we handle the load of all the students who will be on the network at the same time? Is that, like, how does that happen? How do we make sure that the right people are thinking about this and evaluating that and letting us know if there's a budgetary implication here that we need to move on? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a Scott question along with Feng. So the two of them would have to, you know, take a look. You know, the Feng would have to send her people over to OLS to get a look at it and see if it is something structural or a switch problem or what it is, or just, you know, add 5 more access points. It might be as simple as that some of the access points are just over text, and you know, by adding a few more, it's going to spread the load and solve the problem. We just don't know. So
is that a request? Sorry, Hal. Is that a request that the high school would make, or the superintendent, or
yeah?
capital?
You know, I tend to just send off an angry email every now and then, and that'll bring Scott and Feng to the table. Usually,
okay.
I usually modify the emails to make them a little bit nicer, but with a little bit of edge.
He softens it a little bit, and then we send it out. But that tends to bring people to the table. So that's probably the route.
I'm just wondering if it doesn't need more than that, some sort of outside consultant to come in and look at it. Well, start with the in-house, but if it doesn't go anywhere, I think it needs to be raised to the next level in terms of getting an outside. There are people who do this all the time. I don't know if
we don't have answers soon, Helen, then we'll hear about it on October 20th.
Well, I don't want to wait till then. Well. I don't want to wait till then.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the ask, is like, can we start this process now and ask them before the kids are back in the buildings, is this going to work? And let's find that out now. So I guess I'm offering is if somebody needs to send an email, or make a call, let us know. 'Cause I think we should do it soon.
And maybe
Well,
it's, sorry,
Susan-
go ahead, Ellen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted.
No, you're good. You go ahead.
I'm wondering if on any of your task force, there might be somebody who might be able to consult with us.
Yes, and I think that this sort of ties into the question of help desk people. It ties into the question of education technology resources, both at a kind of a senior level, as a consultant, if you will, to the district, or a full-time employee, kind of a senior director of remote learning, someone who was a former principal or someone who was pretty senior in this space and has this, that can kind of really work with the educators to kind of think through the different pieces. And then there's sort of the hardware, bandwidth, technology pieces. Of all of them, I'm actually less worried about the bandwidth pieces, because I think when we can get everyone's attention, then looking at the bandwidth is something we know how to do. I think I'm a little more concerned with some of the other pieces. Help desk, just because I think we haven't quite made the case that we probably need, I don't know, pick a number, 5 more help desk people in the town right now. That's my number, not anybody else's, but I don't think it's wrong. And we probably need, at least 1, maybe 2 more people in terms of the education technology piece of it to figure out how to use it. And then we probably need some more PD times, teacher stipend time, to work with educators. And Michelle and I have talked about some of that. So yes, I think that's where I'm just sort of saying, like, there's probably just this comprehensive look at it of like all the different pieces that are moving. And for sure, bandwidth is table stakes. To even get on the network and keep kids and teachers on the network is absolutely table stakes. So I guess I'll just reiterate is, however many of those pieces you can kind of pull out for us, all the better.
Can you bring us up to speed on the jargon table space?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Table stakes. It's poker.
Table
Poker. It's like an
stakes.
ante.
Stakes. Got it.
Stakes. Table stakes.
Got it.
Bandwidth is table stakes. Sorry.
And I would just say, and
They all just laugh at me. Fine, just go ahead and laugh at my metaphors. Go right ahead. I can't even hear it anymore.
no, that's hilarious. I was going to say, we can try to bring together Feng and Scott and Kareem, and I think our focus would be on the high school. My gut is it's a bigger conversation, and it's Feng and Scott and Kareem coming to a district leadership team meeting to talk about what are the issues we're seeing and that are going to increase as we shift into a hybrid model. That may be the right step. And it's a little, Michelle, you probably work most closely with Scott right now. It's certainly a different world with not having Nicole here and deputy superintendent of teaching and learning, but Scott's definitely a key voice in all of it.
Right, and we've talked about this a little bit with Scott and with some of the ETS people through panel, panel 3. Okay, panel 3. We've also talked about it panel 1 in terms of education equity. There's like a whole equity focused component to that and what students have access to, what they need access to. So yes, I think the point that Michelle and I have talked about is just sort of bringing the budget pieces together. And Mary Ellen knows this is coming. I'm sure she's got her raincoat on, not excited about the rain this must fall, but she knows it's coming.
Okay, great. Are there any other budgetary or staffing implications that you wanted to talk about, Hal, or are we ready to move to the next whatever piece?
Can I ask one more question if you don't have anything? Or you might have something.
No, go ahead.
The 2 things I worry about in this environment, and some of them are perennial concerns, and so that just might be how are we dealing with it here, and then some of it may be new. So as we think about the really in-person academic subjects, chemistry labs, physics, like things that need to be in person, not stuff that you can more or less do remotely. Sort of how are we thinking about that now and going forward? And I think the second piece is, as we think about just the workload on educators, I'm just sort of struck by the fact that, when we've got one educator with 4 or 5 sections, and those sections are now, some of them are bigger than they have been historically, just sort of how many papers can you grade sort of thing, and how much feedback can you give well. And I guess I worry about it a little bit more in a remote environment, because at least if you've got, 30 kids per class and you've got 4 classes or, whatever, more, at least you see them, right? At least you can kind of lay your eyes on them and kind of interact with them in the old world. And so to whatever extent you're not writing extensive comments on their papers or whatever, like at least you see them. And I guess I'm sort of wondering how that piece plays out in this world. But they're two separate but related questions, I guess. And whether or not there are FTE implications ultimately, right?
So the numbers aren't really substantially different from prior years. We haven't seen any larger classes. You know, I have a few large classes. You know, some of my advanced math classes tend to start larger because we know the historical attrition pattern behind those courses.
And that's always been true, right?
Always been true, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing that's outside of the
Okay.
normal variance between class sizes. They've got, you know, a few of my AP classes are quite large, but the
Quite
ordinary
large around, what are we talking?
for an AP, it could be up to
28,
30.
30.
30,
30.
more than
Yeah,
30.
27,
But that's
28, 29, 30, somewhere in that neighborhood. I might have one section of BC Calc that's at 31 or 32, maybe.
but we've always had that, right?
Always, yeah. Again, there's no variance between that and what we've had in prior years.
And that's a handful, like a couple dozen, a dozen.
Correct.
I mean, how many are like there's a stable handful
Correct.
at level?
Yep. Yeah. And so the majority of classes would be, 24, 25, honor level 24, 25, standard level 19, 20, 21, somewhere in that range for the vast majority of our classes. So again, within the range that it's always been. We did not see any creep in size.
Okay.
And the second question, Hal, was about labs and
Yeah, so Ed Weiser has been great about helping his teachers. And again, this really leads into the main part of what we wanted to talk about today, then why we're sort of narrowing down some of these curricular areas, because we recognize that and in a subject like chemistry, you need to have these lab experiences. You need to bring kids into the building and have kids do these experiences. And therefore, it requires teachers to be working together. They need to be working together to create the labs that are going to work, and also be thinking about, okay, how do we take this curriculum that we used to teach in this order, this way, and change it so that I've got the lessons that are going to work in the remote portion, September, October, and then which portions of the curriculum are going to work are necessary that I have kids in the building, or better that I have kids in the building. And that's going to be November, December. And then, we were expecting that there'll be some type of in and out over the course of the year. And, my science teachers especially are thinking in that term. They're thinking, okay, these are the lessons that are going to work well remote. And this is the type of lab setup we can do for remote. And this is the type of equipment that we want to get into kids' hands so that they can do a little chemistry lab at home. And here's a lesson that involves, materials that are unsafe, and that I must have kids that come into the building, and therefore they'll set those lessons, which they might have taught in the past in September, and that's going to be the mid-November lesson when they know the kids in place. And again, so part of that is about rearranging the curriculum. Part of it is about working together so that they can create these labs. To ask a teacher to do that on their own, to come up and do that, just doesn't make sense. We don't need to have every teacher in the building reinventing the wheel when we are, in essence, reinventing the wheel. But this is the type of wheel that's going to be much better by committee. And so by having the chemistry teachers working together and developing these lessons together, it just makes it so much better and easier for them to sort of come up with what works and what's going to work when the kids come in the building and be ready for those labs. So,
and what about the kids who are all remote? And what about kids who are all remote this year?
Yeah, for them, it's going to be a little bit different experience, and it's, the biggest miss for them will be in something like chemistry lab. That's something which is hard, but again, that's what they're working on. They're looking at what can we do to make that experience valuable for the kid who can't come into the building. And what can we give them that gives them a touch? And again, part of that might be you're watching along. You don't, obviously we want kids to be hands-on. Hands-on is better, but not as good, but okay is watching along. So if you're able to watch along and still get the observations and still see what's there, and that might be with this camera, that might be with an owl, that might be with a group member sharing on their phone, FaceTiming with someone as they're doing the experiment, so that the remote student has the opportunity to see see on a camera, see on a different type of screen what's happening, and allow them then, of course, the most important part of the experiment, then to write it up and to do the other work that's related with a lab. So yeah, obviously it's better if everybody's here, but I think the adjustment that people are making, especially along the lines of science labs, are going to help to create a good experience for everyone. Helen?
Yeah, I have a question. Well, it's sort of a two-part question. I mean, we know this spring there was some areas that probably didn't get covered, that kids didn't get all the curriculum. We're talking about less time in a class. That doesn't mean less knowledge or less curriculum, but so I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about how we're catching kids up, specifically, I guess, in math, where it's more, chronological, but in other areas too, certain basic skills that you learn at certain times of the year in certain grades. Have you been doing that sort of work, or what have you been doing? I'm sure you've been doing it, but what have you been doing, and how is it working?
Sure. So I can, Hal, you can speak to this some too. I would just say that absolutely we were mindful in the spring of the impacts of our extended school closure. And so in planning from the spring into the summer into our 10 opening days, a lot of work has gone into creating assessments to know where students are coming into the year. And some of that was supported by the Innovation Fund, especially for the 8th to 9th grade transition, which I think we worry about more than any of the transitions. We also engaged in similar work, probably not as deep as what Michelle led, K to 8, but kind of the high school version of essential curriculum. So I should have sent yesterday, and I'm trying to send tonight, just a fairly pithy document of each department saying, these are our overall areas of focus. And that doesn't get into the weeds of curriculum as much as it says, within performing arts, these are the essential skills. And we use similar language to what Michelle and the K to 8s have used around enduring skills and so on. And then our teachers absolutely every year, share course expectations that describes what students are going to be learning. And so that's work that is ongoing in each classroom. I probably should have a better sense of exactly how that's going. I know there were department meetings today, and more of the focus was on what does hybrid instruction look like given our subject area. Hal, I don't know if you have more to add than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of what you're asking, Helen, is are we going to, can we catch up everything? And the answer is no. We can't catch up everything. We're less time in class. We have more emphasis on the social emotional learning of kids and making sure that we're engaged with kids who are remote for now and maybe staying remote or maybe back and forth. And, it's a changed world. And so the answer at the end is that, we're going to offer a lot of what Brookline High School is good. We're going to be offering a lot of what that curriculum is, but we're not going to be offering all of it. And I think what teachers are working on and what department coordinators are working on is how they can pick out what's essential and pick out what they know they know that they need the kids to learn, and focusing on those portions of the curriculum, because it's, I don't know how you could quantify what it is, but it's not going to be 100%. Of what a kid would have had in person 2 years ago. It's some number less than that.
And I would just add quickly, and it looks like Suzanne and Barbara, you both have questions or thoughts. I would just say the onus is on us, on Hal and me, in order to communicate to parents, guardians, and caretakers that there is a trade-off. And so that's our next email. We're hoping to send a Blackboard communication today that just says we're shifting to hybrid. These are the target dates. Here's this curriculum document that tries to summarize our various subject areas. But we need to say that we believe hybrid is absolutely the right move. We want to get kids back into school and to have that social experience that is so central to high school or school in general. And it carries with it some trade-offs in terms of learning. And I don't want to overemphasize that. I certainly don't want to freak out parents, but I think there's been a lot of questions and criticism leveled at all of us on this call about being transparent. And I think the reality is we're figuring out a lot of it, but I want to try to crystallize that for parents as we transition from remote into hybrid. But sorry, Barbara,
It's almost as if we had no monetary constrictions, we could add a month onto the school year and do some of that catch up.
That'd be great.
Barbara, did you want to add on?
I had a question or a concern. I'm concerned about the kids who fall through the cracks. We all know that there are some kids who in just the regular school have difficulty keeping up. And very often things get out of hand almost before you realize it, particularly I think at the high school level because they're moving between classes. How are you going to handle those students? Part of it is keeping on top of whether they're doing their work and whether they're attending classes, but whose responsibility is that? Do you have any people who are really focusing on this particular kind of kid?
Sure, Barbara, it's a really good question. I would say one just additional piece we've put in place for this year. We have 2 interim progress reports during first quarter, and that's just a structure we've always had, is having one interim progress report to say, here's what's working well for a kid, here's where a kid is struggling. We believe, given the shift, given last spring and given how we're reinventing school, that parents really need to, we're worried that kids who struggle are going to struggle almost right away, and we'd like to catch them on October 7th. Our IPRs are due for teachers tomorrow, and then I think we have another one due maybe the 28th or 29th of October. So they're pretty boom opportunities for us to communicate with families. In terms of kids who are who fall behind, or as you say, fall through the cracks, I would say the onus is always on the teacher. However, we have key supports in place, as always, that each kid at the high school has a counselor and has a dean, and those teams meet frequently and send up, and teachers send up flares about kids that they're worried about. And last spring, it was more focused on who's not online at all. Last year was a lot of triage, but we didn't have some of the key data that we have this year, including attendance. Meaning, by not requiring attendance last year, we were looking for those kids in the dark, whereas now we have better data around who might not be engaging or who might not be doing work. And the other piece I would just add is, and this is true of the middle schools too, as you all know, having every teacher on Canvas is just a game changer. And there are some blessings within the pandemic. The fact that this has pushed us institutionally to have 100% of our teachers on Canvas at least means we can compare apples to apples or see kids who are struggling. And so I would say to your question, is there somebody responsible? I would say guidance counselors and deans carry that ball, but it is a teacher's responsibility to at least send up the flare to families, to kids. You know, we're having a lot of Zoom calls where we know where a student is, and Lisa Redding pops in on that Zoom class meeting as it's ending, and the teacher has said, hey, Susan, we need to talk with you briefly after school. And you do that in some chat way that's appropriate, that's not public. And then boom, there's Lisa Redding in your mix nicely, but also saying what's happening here. Hal, other thoughts on Barbara's good question?
Yeah, you know, it's social, it's guidance counselors and deans, it's social workers, it's program support people. It's, you know, there's a lot of people in this building that will be out looking for kids and trying to help those kids that are in danger of falling through the cracks.
Suzanne, did you have a question?
Well, actually, it was related to Barbara's, but I was not thinking of the typical kind of kids falling through the cracks. But I'm wondering if you could just say something about the special programs, ACE and Winthrop House, and are they also doing the same schedule? It's two days off and 3 days on, or are they doing something different?
Well, they've been engaging in in-person learning or a hybrid approach. Both Winthrop House, located, as you all know, at the Baldwin School, and many of our other special education programs at Old Lincoln School, and they vary in terms of how frequently they're meeting. I don't remember offhand which days they're in and out.
I think they're coming in 4 days out of 5 right now in the first to return period. Certainly for ACE, I know that they're working right now in a rotation. They're considering bringing back all the kids when we come back. We have a little bit of a space issue if that's the case, but it's manageable. I was just talking with Amy about it today, Amy Byer today. So I think we can work that out, and I think that you know, they've got great response from their kids now in person, and also the kids who are coming in remote. So I think that they're ready to go. I think to bring back a full cohort of kids, assuming we can find and make sure that the space is good for them.
And will the first to return students, do they stay as a cohort, or are they going to go into the classes physically? I'm not sure how that works.
In most cases, they'll stay in the cohort. So our RISE students, for the most part, are taking classes within RISE community, but honestly, that's not like everything else at Brookline High. It's a mix. And so in the case of ACE, you have kids taking their 4 core academic classes within the program, but then they're taking wellness education and their electives outside of the program. But it's been great, as Hal is emphasizing and has said a couple times. Both ACE and Excel have really helped us pilot some things and pilot a hybrid approach, which has been, I think, has been important in terms of getting lots of our bugs out. So we expect that will continue, and it's been interesting. ACE is a general ed program, and there they are flexing hybrid right now. It's been really important.
And do we have many that you expect will remain remote students that will, do we have any number of
You know,
them?
it varies. We get new emails from parents every day saying, I want to change from remote to hybrid now that I see what hybrid is. Or I want to change, I'm scared of what's happening with the pandemic. I want my kid to be remote. I think we're going to continue to have that wave. And again, this is one of the key reasons why we thought this was the right model, because we anticipated that we'd have kids and parents that would, you know, be changing their comfort level with what we're doing based on what they're seeing around them. And that's going to be what they see in society, but also what they see their peers doing and what their friends doing and what other families in town are doing. So we think, you know, when the kids come back, they see that it's safe. The teachers come back, see that it's safe, and other parents see that. And then we're going to see kids coming back to school. But then if, you know, infection rate starts rising, we might expect people to start going the other direction. So it's quite variable.
But unlike the K-8s, it's not its own academy. The
Right.
remote, they're part of the hybrid classes, correct? Yeah. So they could go back and forth with minimum, I guess, disruption.
Correct.
Yes.
So that's great. Okay, thank you.
The next item on your list was needs for next year. I assume that was just humor, because if you think that we're ready to talk about what we need for next year, we can talk about what I need for next week.
Day. We don't even have a word for what you call next day.
I don't know what that even means. So we'll just skip that. But thanks for that humorous note, Jennifer, on the agenda. That's great.
Welcome. That was free of charge. So, no, I think that the committee, that list came not from me, just from the committee, from the subcommittee, and was really just wanting to put on everyone's radar, that our budget cycle starts early, right, in November, and just for people to be thinking about what are the specific needs that people might have, and because we want to be supportive of whatever it is that we can do to get the right resources in your hands so that you can pass them on, right, to educators and our students. So, we had a very helpful conversation, I think, in the earlier portion where we talk about some of those budgetary implications, some of the staffing implications for this year. And so one of the things we were wondering and talking about briefly at our prior meeting was, what are some of the things that we might, and I think you hinted at, kind of talked about this a little, what are some of the things we're doing this year or we want to do that we might also want to budget for next year, even if we were returned to it in person. So in listening to the conversation we were just having about the sort of flexibility of the model, of the hybrid model, and kids and teachers coming in and out, that makes the OWL cameras and microphones incredibly useful and helpful on a long-term basis, right? As well as sort of this conversation about wellness teachers or other teachers needing very large monitors. That's really well thought out stuff that is an investment that we can do. So I don't think we were looking for an itemized list for next year, but maybe just to begin the conversation or get initial thoughts on what are some of the things that you're envisioning for this year, and then long-term sort of thinking just to start the conversation.
Yeah, anything that I say now would be speculative. After November, after I have my full group back here, my December faculty meeting, that could be a time when we turn to the staff and say, okay, now let's project this out to next year. What do we need? That's when we'll get the real data. Otherwise, we're just, it's just imaginings at this point. But yeah, we understand that the need, we should be asking for these things earlier. No question. Susan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the question, not that it needs an answer, but I think, as we think about a few months of learning loss, or we think about a year that was sort of slowed down, it's very easy to think about that in incremental terms. And for sure, we'll have families who supplement that in a variety of ways. We'll have a bunch of families that don't, and they will fall further and further behind. So I guess a different way to ask the question is, as we think about kind of a longer term trajectory for some of the students that we're most worried about, the gap is opening, it's not closing, right? And so we're just at the beginning of the gap opening, because I think it's going to continue to open, unfortunately, unless we, wrench it back closed. And some of it is around technology access at home. Some of it is about, somebody who's there. I mean, even dumb things like if my iPad goes down and, I can kind of give a different computer to my kid or whatever it is, right? That's not every family has access to that. Or, para support, kind of social emotional pieces, or anything that we can think of that in learning loss in particular, and some of those gaps. And so I guess for me, it's not only which pieces of technology are you going to need in 18 months, but it's as we think about the trajectory of some of these kids' lives, there are a bunch of kids I'm not worried about, and then there are a bunch of kids I am worried about. In fact, I get more worried about, not less. And so if there are things we can do now to kind of change the curve of the broadening, if that makes sense, change the trajectory of the widening, I'd be pretty interested in that. I mean, certainly it's true that if we teach less to the kids in the AP classes, they won't be able to teach, learn the AP or pass the AP, but that feels like a very different problem from a group of kids who, so I won't say it again, but I do just wonder if there are things we can put in place now and, for the price of just a few more FTEs or whatever interventions or whatever it is, we stop that widening now. So it's just a different way to ask the question.
It's Susan, it's a good question coupled with Jennifer's question. I think one thing that we've tried to do is expand and change our tutorial program. And so thinking about that general ed support. And so that's been working with the coordinators to, we're not having as many currently as, we're not having the typical academic help centers that we've had in a remote environment. We just think it's a very different world. And so we put more of those human resources into tutorials that can expand and evolve. So that's one area. And I know that that's been a sore spot in the district in terms of use of +1 resources being expensive. And also we know how important it is for academic support, as well as recruitment and retention of high quality staff. Another area that I think would be good to talk about, and it's good that Meg is on here, is thinking about our summer programming. Just to be candid, we did not at the high school offer a robust summer school experience. We really focused on the kids who had failed classes that were critical for graduation. And some of that was not being sure what it would look like remotely and, being concerned about the safety of our buildings in the summer. But as we look ahead to next year, I think it makes a great deal of sense to partner with Meg to think about ESY, to think about the general ed portion of summer programming, because I think you all likely heard parents were really starving for more learning opportunities, especially for kids who had fallen behind, and families who can afford that were seeking those opportunities, and we had many kids who did not. So thinking about, and I don't mean just traditional summer school, but additional programming, I think would be an area of interest. And we have Brendan Kobus running our summer school, and he is very, very good with a special ed background that I think is helpful in a conversation like that. Those are a couple thoughts, Hal. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the in-person idea, what we were attempting to do for the BHIP, I think is something that addresses that in some way. And, it's now that we have a lot more confidence in the physical space in the building, and now that as staff begins to have more confidence in that and then I think we'll be able to offer some of those opportunities, and for next summer or for, whenever that comes, I think that will be something that we can do that helps to change your trajectory, as you're talking about, of those gaps. But it's a real problem that you're addressing, no question about it. It's something that's on the mind of a lot of the teachers and the administrators here at the school.
So Hal, I see, and Anthony, I see we're coming up on 5:30, and I want to be really respectful of your time and others. Are there pieces that were on the list that we didn't get to that you think we really should bring to the front?
Yeah, you wanted to talk about what we've done specifically to courses. And I think this was really the key. This was the thing that I had brought up in a school committee meeting over the summer that prompted this whole conversation. So we didn't get to that. So we'll have to accept your lovely parting gifts perhaps and come back and talk about that. But I was going to talk about changes that we've done in art, changes that we've done in wellness, changes in English, some of the changes in some of the CTE courses. And again, just with the broadest brush, the idea is that instead of teaching 10 different cooking classes, French cooking, baking, Chinese cooking, all of that, it's been narrowed down into one culinary program. And that is, we've got a great rationale from Britt Stevens, and the teachers are into it, and we're sending materials out. They've really built a program that's much more appropriate for the world that we're in that they're able to support it. They're able to offer a program that works better in this environment, because they're able to, instead of trying to come up with all these different lessons, they're able to say, okay, here's the essentials behind our culinary. This is what we're trying to do with the culinary program, and therefore let's get materials out into the world, out to kids, and start teaching it that way, rather than saying, okay, today, we're going to go through or this month we're going to go through 5 different types of French cooking. Instead, it's okay. Here's this essential part of the culinary experience. So, we can go into those in much more detail at another time if you want. The other things that you were asking were special concerns and timeline. So understand, and this is important curricularly, that we're bringing back our 9th grade on October 20th, and we're bringing everybody else back on November 9th. The 9th graders will continue to be remote into their elective classes. So they're not going to be traveling. They're not going to be doing the cohorted travel back and forth beginning on October 20th. Again, it's at the beginning of their Monday or the end of their Tuesday or the Thursday, Friday, as it were, for those classes, for their cooking class, for their wellness class, for their music class or drama class. They'll be doing those this is just for that period, for that first
2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 2.5 weeks. They'll be doing those, they'll continue to do those remote, and do the other 5 classes, the other 5 blocks will be the in-person blocks. That was important for you guys to recognize.
Is that remote at home or is that remote at school?
It'll be some of each.
could
We'll
be either,
offer
right.
opportunities for kids to
Okay.
do that at school, but they are bookended at the beginnings of some of the days and the ends of the end of the days, just because that's how we set it up for the travel. And so kids will have the option to stay home and come in. And again, that helps with our spacing and spreading and not having loads of kids come into the building at the same time, all of which is an advantage for us in COVID planning.
It was just a complicating factor in terms of having a 9th grade program that has kids coming over to the 115 location, that we wanted to bring kids back on October 20th, 9th graders in particular, but that was sort of our compromise, was not opening up all those 115 spaces, but rather have kids engage in their electives and perhaps world language courses, and as Hal said, wellness remotely. And we will communicate that to parents so that they understand that that's the plan. Helen, you had a question though.
And let me
Yeah.
just,
I just started to think about the 9th grade and Wednesdays and going to 7 classes and being able to get back and forth. How?
well, there's no back and forth. There's either back or forth. The travel only happens one day. One way.
I
So
see.
the kids will start here.
Mhm.
The kids in the red cohort would start here. They do A and B block here, and then traverse over the brand new route that we're mapping out along Route 9
heard about that route.
because of the bridge at White Place. They'll go over to OLS for the other 5 blocks on that day, and the other cohort begins their day over there with A through E block, and then we'll traverse over here for their F and G block at the 115 area. So there'll be a little bit of an offset on the schedule for 9th grade on those once we begin that on November 9th.
Are there any other committee members that have burning high school questions that we did not get to discuss before we let our honored guests enjoy the rest of their evening? I'm sure they have plenty of work to do.
I just wanted to add one more thing curricularly for you guys to understand. We're still working with the DESE restrictions on for in-person for some of those courses.
And wellness.
So dance, chorus, orchestral music, wellness, all have separate DESE guidance. We're expecting that some of that might get updated and changed over the coming months, but I don't think there's going to be chorus in person for a while, for example. So there will be some maneuvering, there will be some
Lip
special
syncing.
circumstances that we have to deal with for some of those courses. They're working great in remote. I've got a Shakespeare play that's being planned and rehearsed in remote. We've got a 9th grade play that's happening. We've got drama. We've got Camerata working great in remote. It's just that we just can't say, okay, now you're back in person. I'm not putting 40 people up on risers in the atrium or the gym or the chorus room. seemingly that's not going to be happening for quite some time.
I would just
Can I
reiterate
get
from a
one more
budget point
question
of
in?
view. I was just gonna say from a budget point of view, just please make sure that we know if the music program needs something because they can't do what they were supposed to be doing in person and they need different technology or whatever, let us know. I mean, this is the time where for FTEs and technology requests. I think that's sort of the theme of the afternoon. So thank you.
This may be a premature question, but the tents, have you thought about how you may be using them, or what your plans are for them?
Yeah, so for the tents over at OLS and here, we have the 3 already on Cypress, as you may have seen. We are going to have a lot of time with kids who are going to be out of the building,
Good.
getting that mass break, getting that time and giving them some areas of space. We're going to be telling kids to, bring towels with them or bring something they could sit on the ground with, because we're not going to be putting chairs out there, but we are going to be expecting kids to take their lunch, go out, sit under the tents. And so there'll be some of that. There'll also be, if we do have dance class in person, it's part of the DESE guidance is not to do it in a dance studio because they don't, and to do it with amplification. So it's a dual need. So here's a technology need. I need a little portable mic for my dance teacher so she doesn't have to shout the instructions over the music to the dance kids. Yeah, the little headset mic. So, that's something we don't have. And we don't have a little portable speaker that's enough so that she can be under the tent outdoors teaching safely, and the kids can hear her there, but not so loud, not my giant sound system, so that I can still have somebody teaching upstairs in 385 and not be disturbed by the music that's happening there. So little things like that are certainly, that's some way that we'll use the tent. I think it's just going to be, especially at OLS, it'll be a nice refuge for the kids and for wellness classes as well, because wellness classes are also strongly recommended to be out of doors. So as much as possible, it's going to be out of doors. Maybe the other technology need that we'll need will be knitting needles, because we're going to be needing kids to be wearing sweaters, jackets. It's going to be cold in the rooms. If the demand is for as much fresh air as we can deal with. I was just talking with Charlie today. We're not going to be heating these rooms to 68 degrees consistently. These rooms will be colder, and so sweaters, jackets. Going outside for kids for lunch when it's 47 degrees is going to be this year in Brookline.
And Helen, I would just pick up the tent question by also addressing Remote Plus. We just have not made that a priority at the high school, and I think that has put the school committee and Jim to some extent in a bad position. And so in my communication today, I'm just trying to own that for the high school, that with all of our priorities over the last few weeks, we have not made the plus as much a priority as some members of the public would want. And so I just need to own that as a school principal, that it is, with everything else, that has not been at the top of our list. And I would rather people who are frustrated about it direct that frustration to me, not to you all, not to Jim, and certainly not to our staff. So that's something that I'm writing now and will share with the community. And the questions won't cease, but I think people feel as though they need greater transparency. So I'll try to provide that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this has been really, really helpful. I know we all really appreciate you taking the time to share with us the update on the high school. It's about 5:30. I know you have 5,000 other things you probably need to do. So I really want to just let you know how much we really respect your time that you've come to share with us, and to thank you for your hard work. We appreciate you. So
Thanks for having us. And we'll have some enormous asks and technology in your hands within a couple of days.
Okay, I love
and thank you. Yeah, thanks for all the support. We really appreciate it.
We do really appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thanks. Have a great night.
You too.
We have another set of guests who are able to join us this evening. We are so grateful that they're able to come and share with us tonight. I see we have Meg Messini. And if you could introduce us to maybe the other people with you, Meg. I don't think all the members of the public are familiar. So welcome and thank you. I think you're muted, Meg. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Thanks so much, Jennifer, for the introduction. I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Christine Moynihan, who is my counterpart at the Remote Learning Academy this year. And I'm going to ask her to introduce herself in a second. And also, I'd like to introduce, if you don't know, Joe Russo, who is our wonderful Director of Human Resources, who's also joined us during this meeting. You know, as you heard from me in an update of the school committee, we wouldn't even be sitting here right now without all of the hard work of central office, including Michelle Herman, Joe, Chris, certainly, and all of the other offices up here on the 5th floor. So, but I'd love to ask Chris to introduce herself and give a little bit of context for who she is to the committee. Oop, you're on, you're on mute.
Mute. Okay, am I all set?
You are.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I get to learn a new school committee. I've been around for a while doing these things. So yeah, a tiny bit of my background so that you kind of know that I might have, I hope I have something to offer. I was a classroom teacher in Natick for 8 years. And I lost my job when Proposition 2.5 came in. That's how old I am. So it came a lot. I was 88 on the seniority list of 90 teachers who were fired. So 88 is not my favorite number. I was lucky enough, I landed on my feet and I got a 1-year position in Dover, teaching 6th grade, which I had left teaching 5th and 6th grade there. And at the end of the year, well, I had 15 days maternity leave because that's all I got back then. I wasn't protected. So I had 15 days off to have my first child, and then I came back and finished full time. And then the principal asked me to stay, but she said, I only have one position and it's kindergarten. I said, well, you're out of your mind. So respectfully, so to move from teaching adolescents to 5-year-olds. But I'm the oldest of 9 children. So I've kind of had, you know, I had some experience, so I took it. And I will tell you, it's one of the best things I ever did. I learned so much. I do feel as if I do need to write letters of apology to those children I taught that first year, because I may have damaged a few of them in my zeal and my zest to do what is best for them at kindergarten. It's a very different animal teaching kindergarten. I stayed there for for several years, and then I was asked to change to 3rd grade. I said, oh my goodness. So every time I went to a different grade, I said, this is my favorite. So I have taught kindergarten, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 5th grade, and 6th grade. And for 35 plus years, I have also tutored from middle school to high school. So in math and science and English as well. So yeah, so I took a year sabbatical in Dover and was able to begin my doctoral program. And I did 13 courses from summer to summer and a fellowship there at BC. But I was in curriculum instruction with a specialization in mathematics. So that's really where my passion then grew even more so for math, even though I'm well-versed and well in love with reading and language arts as well. So I became the director of math in Westwood for 7 years, and that job ended. And then I became the director of math and science in Wayland. And after 5 years, that job ended. So then I took a job that I said I would never take. And I became a principal in Newton, Massachusetts, a little town some of you may be familiar with. And that's where I met a lifelong friend is Joe Russo. Actually, I had met Joe when he was a teacher here in Brookline when I was doing some work in math. So that was amazing a long time ago. But Joe and I were principals together in Newton, and we have weathered many a storm, many a high, many a low together in Joe got me hooked into doing a principalship for an interim for 2 months. It ended up being 14 months in Taunton last year. Very different place, Taunton. And then I retired again, and then Joe pulled me in to Brookline. And here I am now as a consulting principal to Meg, who has done so much work. So that's it in a nutshell. Well, maybe not a nutshell, a big shell, but there we go.
Thanks.
Well, welcome to Brookline from all of us. Thank you. And is it Dr. Russo, Mr. Russo? I'm not really sure how to properly.
Mr. Russo, thank you.
Yes. So thank you.
Dr. Moynihan, Mr. Russo.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. I know that Meg is working super hard at the RLA, and we are just delighted that we can get an update tonight about how everything's going.
Great. Well, I have a PowerPoint to share that Chris and I are going to share credits for. So if Robin, if you could allow me to share my screen, that would be great. Is that great? Can folks see?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So I'm going to play this from the start. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, I don't know why this is doing this, but okay. Oops. Great. Can you see the overview?
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh, I don't know why this is doing this. It's always hard to share this. Okay, I'm not sure if it's going to fade in or not. So I'm just going to I'm going to give you the, just read from the slide. So basically, you know that RLA is our 9th school, but it's our temporary 9th school. And we came into operation 15 days ago. So today marks our 15-day birthday. We have been able to roll out our full schedule this week. We're anticipating that our physical education and our arts, our performing arts will be in place by Friday or Tuesday. So that will mean that we are almost fully staffed and fully rolled out. Right now we have 621 students in grades 6 to 8. We have 77 faculty and staff members. That doesn't include our specials teachers. And most of them are already PSB teachers, except for 6 of our teachers who are new to the system. But these represent people from across the district, which we're really pleased about. We're also the only K-8 school with 3 world languages, which wreaked a little havoc with our schedule, but it's so well worth it. And we want to thank Tanya Alvarado for her help, and Michelle Herman and all of the curriculum coordinators who actually put together our schedule for our specials and really just worked so hard to do that. So we are teaching Mandarin, French, and Spanish this year. And probably the most important thing for the public to know, as well as our school committee members, is that our students are receiving an education similar to the home schools. And it's comprised of core academic, specials, world languages. So they are getting a similar education as they would have were they at their home schools. So I'm going to ask Chris to take on this next slide, if she would.
I will. And Meg underscores when she said that the challenge of having 3 world languages really was quite an obstacle in many ways to effectively make the schedule work, because the nuances of it are almost unbelievable at times. So it's a testament to all of the coordinators, as well as to Michelle Herman. Joe had his hand in it as well. And Meg, of course, worked tirelessly to make this work. Are there still bumps in the schedule? Yes, there are still bumps in the schedule. We're not going to tell you that everything is perfect, because it's not. But it's all a work in progress. And just a little caveat before we go any further with that is also that, you know, this structure, excuse me, of this academy had to take place sort of while the doors were open and kids are coming in, so to speak, virtually. So that's rather hard to do. And again, a testament to all of the staff here at RLA as well. So as Meg said, there are 35 core classrooms. So we have 4 classrooms from, except with one exception in grade 5. We have 4 sections from K to 8. So that gives you the 35, do the math on that one, all right? And as Meg also said, 6 out of the 35 of them are experienced teachers, but they are new to Brookline. As a matter of fact, we have a father-daughter team coming in, which I think is unusual. So we have Lauren Marion, who's teaching, is it 6th grade, 5th or 6th grade, Meg?
6th grade science.
And then her dad is teaching science as well. And he, his former profession was a dentist. So he brings with him a whole different perspective. So it's really nice to see that come in as well. So we have full and part-time world language teachers, as Meg said, with the 3 languages. We do have 1 full-time health and wellness teacher. We have 3 English language teachers. We have 6 general education paraprofessionals. The paras are often an overlooked and an undervalued component of educational systems, but not so in Brookline. They're really held in high esteem as well. They should. They're amazing and do such important work. We have 8 special education teachers, 13 special educational paraprofessionals, 1 secretary who just came on board the day before I did. I've been here for 2 weeks. So all of this work, much of this work was done well before I came on board. We do have 1 building para. We have 2 administrators, well, sort of Meg full-time, well, I'm sort of full-time, I guess, and 1 part-time educational technology specialist, which we are so grateful for. Bob Thomas is a name that some of you may already know. He retired from Brooklyn Public Schools. He was pulled back in, and he was doing some general work amongst all the schools, but we now have been able to add to his part-time. He's now back to being full-time, and he's being able to dedicate some of that time to RLA, and we are extraordinarily grateful. I think he started yesterday, was his first day with us. So
great. Thanks, Chris. So this just gives you a snapshot of our students across the district and across all 8 schools. So you can see that we are drawing students from all over the place. It's, you know, fairly, Pierce is probably the largest community, but there's also one of our larger schools. So we have 120 children that are coming from Pierce, but, you know, Heath is smaller, but again, Heath is a smaller school. So again, you'll see that, you know, some of our grade levels are larger than others. We've also had some movement back to homeschools. And also, interestingly, what we're finding out during this pandemic is there are a lot of people that are out of the country and are not living here, and their children are still accessing their education, which is some of what we're trying to deal with in terms of making sure that, you know, it's really important that they reside in the town and they're living here, because we've had some kids, you know, trying to call in from other countries at all hours to get their education. So that's been an issue and a concern that we've been doing. So anyway, all to say that we initially started off with about 680 students, and over the past 3 weeks, we've had some movement. Chris, do you want to take this slide?
Sure. So we have, we're lucky enough, the METCO program has been near and dear to my heart since I began teaching. It's been in every system in which I've worked. And I think it's a wonderful program for a variety of reasons. So we do have 46 METCO students. We also have 7 students who come to us as Steps to Success members. 34 students are on free and reduced lunch. And we have 120 students with special ed needs. That's a pretty significant number here, but it is what it is. So yeah, it's an important piece to show that we have a range as the brick and mortar schools do as well. So
I also just want to mention that we have 90 EL students, which I meant to put down on the slide. Okay. So, and I apologize to the committee for that. So a little bit about our schedule. So we are running our schedule from 8 to 2:30 Monday through Thursdays, and then Friday from 8 to 1:35. Our teachers have collab time like other district teachers on Fridays. And so that runs from 1:40 to 2:20. Our schedule is almost fully rolled out, as I mentioned earlier, with the exception of physical education, general music, and chorus. We are in the final process of bringing those people on board. Both Carlin Wayunama and Kenny Kozol have been working really hard, as has HR, to onboard people, and we're almost there. So we're anticipating by the end of the week, we will definitely have houses shaking with fervent activity, whether it be singing or exercise. So expect that will be happening. One of the things that's really great at this point, but also a little bit of a concern is, and we'll get to that with the last bullet, is students are in front of live teachers most of the day, every day. It's a long day to be online, and we've heard various feedback from our kindergarten teachers who have been doing conferences with their parents that for some children it's just too much because they're looking at a screen, even though they're engaged in other activities. So we've been rolling out kindergarten a little bit differently. So this RLA school schedule is really for our 1 to 8. Kindergarten has been ramping up much more slowly. And we've been engaging very closely with our teachers as well as our parents, the impact of this on their kids. Because, you know, remembering too, aside from last year for our kids that were in BEEP during the pandemic, this is children's first experience of school. It's on the screen, which is very, very difficult, I think, and very different. I know it's different for our teachers. So we're really trying to be careful about that. So once now that we're stabilized, we're going to be doing obviously professional development with our staff around blending synchronous and asynchronous opportunities moving forward as we consult with our teachers and our parents and caregivers and students about what this might look like and how we look at research about effective practices. And we've got, luckily, with our expert committees that were convened by school committee, we have a plethora of wonderful professional development and experts in this from MIT, you know, from BU, from all over. And so we're hoping to be able to take advantage of some of these experts to help inform what we do moving forward. Because, you know, we have a range of all sorts of opinions with our parents and community about what's enough, what's not too much, what's just right. But we know we're not going to be able to sustain 6 hours a day for kids, because they're really the only ones that are experiencing 6 hours a day straight. So we've got some work to do there. But anyway, so I'm going to move on to this. So Chris.
Okay, so hires in process. I think, Meg, you alluded to this a little bit before as well, but we have 2.3 FTE physical education teachers we are looking to hire that many, 2.1 choral and general ed music teachers, and then 1 special education teacher at the middle school. It's important that, I think you all do know this, but that some of our hires were done after the school had already opened. So that does make it a little tricky. I see some nods of assent knowing that was the case. One of our teachers came on board Saturday night. She was interviewing with Meg Saturday night in order to be able to get in here. So we've had to, be creative in how to go about that, and to be flexible and adaptable, and also be aware that some of these teachers had other commitments before they left their other districts. So we had some gap times in between that. So we've had to juggle a lot of different things, and it has certainly caused some consternation here and there, but we have dealt with it as best we could. And I think that we're fairly well positioned at this point. Fairly well positioned. Please note my qualifying words.
Excellent. So I know that community building activities were also one of the questions that the committee had. And, I think that one of the things that you get with Chris and me as a package is, community and relationships are central to what we do as people and what we do in education. And so as we are now able to really say, we're a school, we have a schedule, we have things in place, now we're going to ramp up. And Chris has came up with this great idea that we implemented last week of a morning meeting. And we're hoping to do that for the whole school now that we, I think, have access to Uber Zoom, which allows us to have more than 500 people on. So Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about morning meeting?
So it's just what you all know as morning announcements type of a thing. So it's not really a morning meeting, it's more like morning announcements. We have to be strategic about how to utilize that best. In my past work as a principal, building community from K to 5, I was in K to 5 schools, was critical, okay? So I wanted all the kids to know each other. So we got together frequently, physically, and once a month. That's the whole school meeting, second part of that first bullet there. So a whole school meeting from K to 5, so the kids could, we highlighted, we showcased certain grade levels, we recognized birthdays for the month, did all of those things that build community amongst the kids. So I thought that maybe we could do that K-8 here, but it strategically, that may be a bit challenging. So we may end up doing K to 5 and 6 to 8, because it's not going to be the same type of thing. The 8th graders now here at RLA, if they were back at Driscoll or Runkle or whatever, they would look at those kindergartners in their school and say, ha, I remember when I walked the halls of this school as a kindergartner, but that's not going to be the case. So we're trying to decide how to work that. But nonetheless, there's going to be some sort of a unifier on a monthly basis to do these whole school meetings. And then the morning announcements would be something as simple as this. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, October 6th, 2020. It is the 15th day of school. Something good to know about the number 15 or something interesting like that. And today we're celebrating birthdays, and we're going to name children not by their last names, just by their first names in the classroom. So we're protecting that part of their privacy. And then also if we have staff birthdays, to celebrate it that way as well. And any special announcements that might be going out. Remember that tomorrow is an early release day, or Monday is going to be a professional development day, those kinds of things. So to, again, have a snapshot. So we have to figure out how to do that technologically in a way that makes sense and doesn't disrupt the core subjects or the special subjects that are already happening. So
some other things, Chris. So some other things that are going on are that we're working with our guidance department, Maria Lee Taz, who's leading the guidance department. One of our challenges is that we have guidance counselors from all 8 schools. We have 24 guidance counselors who work with our children at Remote Learning Academy. Part of what she's doing is coordinating classroom visits for guidance counselors and incorporating cell activities, so to be doing some push-in. We have a school mascot song, logo, and motto contest that is being led by our middle school, and we just talked about that today, so you might hear your children talking about that. And so we're hoping, I know our teachers and students are hoping for some RLA swag. I don't know how that's going to appear, but they've already got a lot of school pride, and obviously connection back to homeschool as well, which was really interesting how they were incorporating their homeschool mascots, some of them into the RLA kind of feeling, which was really sweet. I'm pleased to report, and I'm not a big Facebook person, but I go on to Facebook to see our Facebook page that one of our parents started. And it's really been a great opportunity for me to see what's on parents' minds. They're supporting one another, and they are asking, they're checking in, they're asking questions, they're expressing concerns and providing support. So it's really been a great community for parents who have joined, and for the public who might be listening to this. If you haven't joined, I encourage you to. I think there are about 200 members of Facebook right now, and it's just, I think it's a very positive place, and I've been able to pop in and out. We've had one of our town meeting members is a parent in RLA and has reached out both to Chris and to me about room parents, and we've had a number of parents also say, what do you need? How can we volunteer? I think that, because we're a temporary school and we're not our own 501c3, there's some questions about how to do parent-teacher organization. So we are trying to figure out how to incorporate parents in a way, volunteer, because we have so many wonderful parents that are like, how can we help? How can we help? Well, now we're at the point where I think we can do that. Optional outdoor staff and student meet and greets. We've had a couple of teachers actually meet their kids and hand out materials. Not all of, and I just want to say it has to be optional, because like some of our children who are medically fragile that might be in the program, we have some staff members who are medically compromised, and this is their accommodation to continue working. So some of them may not be able to do actual physical meet and greets. So we have to carefully think about doing this in planned stages, both to, for our parents, our children, and also our staff members. There's potential time back at home schools with activities open to RLA families. So we most recently have been invited back, RLA students have been invited back to home schools for their pictures. So Runkle has their picture day today and tomorrow for a rain day, but today looks beautiful. So I'm hoping everyone made it there. We'll be continuing to communicate with our parents and families about those dates, and children can attend and they won't be, marked absent. The parents just need to contact us so we know that the children are are at the schools. So, Chris?
Okay, I'm going to
Can I
interrupt my own train of thought. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, it's Jennifer, and I know it's hard to see who's talking with the display.
Yep.
I was just wondering, there's just so much information. If we could just take a minute. Oh, hello.
Okay.
If we could just take a minute, maybe, and like I was starting to stack up a couple questions that I think could probably be answered as we go, and I was wondering if other committee members did as well, so we could have a little bit more of a conversation. And although I very much appreciate the sort of formal presentation or the PowerPoint, we really wanted to, have a conversation. And so, if it's okay with all of you to maybe just ask a few questions, is that okay with you? So. I was just wondering, you mentioned as part of the RLA, and I think this is happening in other schools as well in the remote model, there are a number of students who perhaps may not actually be living locally at this time, particularly students who are overseas. And I think that's very challenging for both students and our educators, and really asking a lot of teachers to make accommodations for that. And so I'm just wondering if you have any sort of sense of like how many students may be impacted in this way in the RLA. If you may not know, I think it's a tricky thing to know, but maybe you have some sense.
To the best of our knowledge, it's probably under 5, we think. So it's not that many, but it's enough so that we really want to follow through on that, Jennifer, and figure out how we can get that information. As a matter of fact, you brought in our new attendance person, as Meg has said. So Maria has already reached out to one family and had a discussion with them. She only came on board yesterday as well. And was able to tell them that they would have to withdraw their child, because this is what the policy calls for. If you don't live here, and if a child is showing up at 9 o'clock in the morning for 10 minutes because then she has to go to bed because she's in Taiwan, that doesn't work, okay? So, and even though some of these families have homes here and would like to maintain a connection here, I mean, they're more than welcome when COVID is over, they want to come back. It's not as if they can never come back into the Brookline Public Schools. So we're trying to treat it with compassion and understanding, but also understanding that that's not a sustainable situation. So, Helen.
In our policy book, it says children must sleep in Brookline 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yep, it is. It is. So again, we're trying to, as we said, be compassionate about it, but by saying, no, it's not really going to be the appropriate course of action. And the best course of action, that's not the best thing for the child, a young child to be getting on board with us at 9 o'clock for 10 minutes. So that's really probably not the very best thing. So I agree, Helen. Nice.
Yeah, there was some brief discussion about this yesterday at policy subcommittee as well.
Okay.
And just sort of talking about looking at, the policy and implementation. Another question I had was just one of the slides talks about, I know that there's been a big lift of trying to staff the RLA. And I think some of that has to do with timing for lots of reasons, right? So there were a few hires that we're still working on. And I know people are working very hard at it. I'm just wondering what the timeline might be, like how much longer do we think it might be before we can fully staff these positions? And there were a handful of them, but still, like how long do we think it might take us to get to fully staffed?
I think we've got everybody except for the special education teacher identified and in queue. And so both Kenny and Carlin have their teachers. We're just processing them through HR right now. So we're hoping that that happens very soon. The other thing that I need to say is that along with coordinating 24 different guidance counselors, we're also coordinating 8 different evaluation team facilitators back at home schools. And we're working hard with their special education department to come up with a solution, because that is a huge amount. We also have students all over the range of needs in RLA. We have high needs, moderate needs, lower needs. So anyway, that's a hire that it probably will come internally, but we're working on that. And then insofar as the special education teacher, again, we're trying to fast track that. So.
Yeah, I know that it's tough. This is a tough time to be looking for educators. As we all know, this is not the market for people looking for jobs. So that's really tough. And we really want great, we want to be able to hire great teachers. So I know that's really challenging. So that's helpful to know sort of a lot of people are in the pipeline. And are we allowed to sort of be like, hey, if you know, we know people, please apply at the public schools of Brookline, because we're still looking for some great people.
Yep.
The other question I had, I would one, advocate that if you have additional needs and you need more FTE in order to manage all of, whether it's special education or whatever it is that you all think, I would continue to say, please advocate for those needs, because we really want to be supportive of making sure that you have all the people you need in order to do the jobs that we need to be done for our students. So please let us know, continue to advocate if you need more people. The only other question I had, and maybe other committee members have some, is could you just talk for one more minute about that blend of synchronous and asynchronous that I think is so important to the balance for our students in RLA, and the resources. I know that we've got some really great people in our ad hoc task force subcommittees that have some expertise. And so like how can we be supportive in sort of utilizing those resources to support the work that you all are doing, whether it's PD, whether it's, just thinking about the sort of the pedagogical model of what is a good combination of synchronous and asynchronous teaching.
So I think there's a couple of things. One is it would be great to have an additional day for professional development, because we did not really get enough time to ramp up. And so in talking with, Chris, I know our teachers would really appreciate if we could offer some kind of additional support for them using these committees to do that. I don't know how realistic that is, because parents, we ran at a partial schedule for a week and a half. So, but I think that there are great benefits to the professional development of the only fully remote, school, and we're going to be doing this all year long. So I think that's one thing. I think that we're going to be reaching out to these expert groups, and I've already started, a conversation with Janet and Anne from, I think it's Committee 2-3. And, so I think that, as we sort of move along during the school year, we're definitely going to be using them. But all of this is, time is our enemy right now, and time is what we need. I mean, having staff be able to read research, process research, think about their own practice. We all know teaching and learning is very complicated and very rewarding, but it's also now very public, and in ways that it has never been public before. So there's so much for our teachers also to process. So anyway, I don't know, Chris, if you have something you want to add to that.
You stated things beautifully, Meg, and I would only add to it that having been a classroom teacher for so long, 17, and thinking about how would I be doing this now, I would be hard pressed to think about the best way to do this and to offer a philosophical perspective about what is developmentally appropriate in terms of screen time. Okay, that in and of itself is a huge question that has not been answered definitively, because we don't have the body of research. There's no longitudinal data on this, okay? It just hasn't been done this way, to this depth. I mean, there have been online schools, but not to the degree that we are now in the midst of. So it's hard I'm a research person. I like to be able to go and find. So there is some, but it's not enough for my saying right now. And also, just that we're trying to listen to parents. We've got parents who are saying, way too much screen time, too much screen time. Other parents saying way too much downtime, too much downtime. It's like, oh, okay, how do we meld that together while doing something that we think is philosophically appropriate and developmentally, geared to what children need and the way the children learn. So, and then take that into the mix that we're talking about, as Meg said, children along the huge continuum of learners. We've got kids who it's very easy for them to learn, online. Others, I don't know about you, last Friday I did a remote day, so I was on from 8 until 4. I was jumping out of my skin, okay? As an adult, I was jumping out of my skin, and that was just, an 8 to 4 day, one day for me. So, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to attend to so many different learners. One teacher said, she turned around for a minute and one of her kids was upstanding, was doing a headstand. Okay. It's like, okay, we need to come on back to the class. Okay. So how do you handle those? I know, Helen, isn't that, we saw it in the classroom. You see kids doing cartwheels and thinking, oh, no, please come on back here. But it's easier to control them in a classroom. It's much harder to control them knows that a stare, just a, nonverbal communication goes a long way with many children. And also just a gentle touch on the back can redirect a child. We have lost all those kinds of tools. So it's a conundrum at this point. It's a dilemma of huge proportion. It's not something that we can't tackle because we have to tackle it. The question is, though, how do we do that? And makes it beautifully. Time is our enemy at this point. We don't have the time to sort of stop, research, discuss, meld it together, mush it this way, mush it that way, and make it fit. So it's this old expression called building the airplane in flight, which my superintendent in Westwood gave to me 30-something years ago, and it's stuck in my head. I don't like building an airplane in flight. I don't know if any of you like it. I don't like ambiguities, but that's what we're being faced with. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
That's okay. I see Helen wants to ask a question, and before I lose my thought, because there's a lot of them jumping around in my mind, there are a number of other districts who are also working with this model, and so I know that we may not have the time to do that right now, but there may be, some opportunities to think together through some of these things and share some of the experiences and what's working well in other districts. And so I would just encourage us to, when we have the time to even have the time to send the email, to try to set up a time to chat, that we maybe network with some of our partner districts to sort of utilize resources and work smarter, not harder, as I try to do in my own life. So the other thing I would say is that, one of the things we might want to consider is, what the benefits would be of having additional paraprofessionals in each class. And when you're teaching in a fully remote model, it really is beneficial to have a second adult, so that if you need to go into a breakout room to talk with students about, revisiting virtual norms and what are expected behaviors and what are our goals and being together during this time, that's not a conversation you want to have directly with other students there. And so it's very beneficial if you have someone you can make co-host who can put you in another student, you can chat privately and ask. So just in thinking about your requests and things that will help this to be a productive model all year long, I just throw that out as ideas, as food for thought. Helen, did you want to add?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a professional development day on November 3rd.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's one day that you do have that's coming up quite soon, very soon.
I mean, so I'll tell you, when I started, and this gets back to sort of the conversation we had at school committee when Susan said, gee, we gave principals a year to kind of talk about this. When I started my school, I had, 2 full weeks with my staff ahead of time. And so I know these days are so precious, and they're not going to be enough of them and again, I wanted to just say 2 quick things, because it's so rare that we're all together, but I wanted to just say that, and I know Chris will echo this, because she's had the privilege to meet with some of our teachers, how wonderful our staff really is. I mean, it is amazing to me. Every single day I pinch myself, because they are just such amazing to the letter. There's not one person that's not working hard, that has kids at the center of their practice, that wants to do their best work, that is collaborative, that are problem solvers, that are so amazingly bright. We're so lucky to have them, and in some cases struggling with their own things at home, which kind of brings me to the other thing that I want to say, that as a community in Brookline, we have some people in the Remote Learning Academy and also in our home schools and our brick and mortar schools that are struggling with enormously complex situations. And I'm not just talking about poverty. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about families who spouses lost their job, who are trying to maintain a sense of control and normalcy in very difficult circumstances, who feel isolated because of their own medical conditions and may not be able to go out. And I think that insofar as our community is concerned, and as we were talking about earlier, if we can come together and provide supports for our families outside of, like maybe a support group where parents have an opportunity to come together and talk about what they're struggling with, even with their own kids. I had a parent yesterday talk with me about one of the values in their family is security. They don't allow their kids to go online. But, and what does that mean? And this is the only way that they can talk with their friends now, because they're, so how do we help our parents and our children sort of problem solve these very complicated situations? And I don't know if that's a plan of the school committee, or we have so many resources here. And I think, certainly our school can put together some groups, but I think it's a wider ranging issue.
One of the places to use for that sort of thing, and it may be a better place than in the school, is the Brookline Community Mental Health Center.
Right.
Because they run groups all the time. I think if you were to suggest to Ian, there's really this need in the community, they'd jump on it.
Thank you, Helen. I think that's great.
Great.
Yeah, and I would suggest also, maybe networking with, Maria. I know, everybody's got a lot of things that they're working on, but I'm just thinking, this is something that maybe our guidance staff, they can, or other staff that can help maybe do, like this idea of how can we support parents, right? And so we have a session, sort of, I'm thinking of like the BPEN sessions that we've had before, where we offer a webinar, right, on some topic to parents that could be useful with concrete skills that people can implement and, provide a sense of support. So I don't know, there's definitely some ideas. And I know that I think it'll be a really heavy lift in addition to what you all are doing right now to add on this component. But if we could do this either through another group or like the Brookline Mental Health Center or with work with Maria or other groups, to support this work. But I do think it's important. Susan?
Yeah, I would just say that panels 1, 2, and 3 have had some version of this conversation with Meg and Michelle and Erin Cooley. And I think the good news is that there are parents who, and the PTOs have had this conversation as well. So the good news is there's, interest and willingness for some of the parents in our community who are experts, who are MSWs, who do have facilitation as part of their professional portfolio, interest and willingness to do it. I think, the sort of 2 avenues to go that we've explored are first, what I would call official avenues, through the principal or through the, through sort of the more formal structures of the district. That one, again, just because I think people are very busy, it was a little bit harder to kind of move forward on. I think the other avenue was sponsorship through the PTOs in the existing buildings, and then ultimately a PTO at RLA, because that seemed to have a little bit more traction. So I think those conversations are ongoing. I'm not quite sure where they are. I haven't checked in with anybody in the last couple of days, but I do know that to some extent they need like a little bit of permission or guidance from the district, but not much. I think they're willing to do a lot of the lifting and sponsoring of them. And I think it also just makes it easier because it's not been a district sponsored activity. So it needs it doesn't need to go through all the various hoops and whatnot. And they're also quite interested in, parent engagement as online as well. So if on the website or kind of other ways to, let's say, if there's a great session on executive functioning, potentially videotaping that and getting it up on the PSB website. So all these things have sort of been discussed. I think there's, and some of them have happened, a fair number of them have happened. And I think this is sort of the next one, which is kind of what parents can do to help parents in this. So not quite the level, Helen, where they are, a good candidate for the Brookline Center, but just more, even just the how do we get through a day? Like, what does your space look like around you? What do you do when your 8-year-old, won't get on Zoom? What do you do when your 16-year-old won't get on Zoom? Like, they're just, sort of different things. So I think the conversations are ongoing, and I think they just, yeah. So if folks have ideas on that, that'd be great. I'm happy to channel those back through.
And most of our elementary schools in the past, at least I assume still now, there's both the open house that happens around this time of year, but then there's also the grade level sort of dinner get-togethers. Well, it wouldn't be a dinner get-together, but it could be some, and I don't know if that's still happening. Susan, has that happened with your kids?
So it's a mix. I think some of the PTOs have found ways to do kind of the kindergarten welcome back. They've, one school in particular, it was what used to be called the kind of kiss and cry, right? Sort of you give your kindergartner up, and then you go to the library and you get to cry with all the other kindergarten parents. So one of the PTOs did sponsor a kiss and cry, but it was distanced and there was no food, and you couldn't really cry or share tissues. But at any rate, they did have it. And I think others have done different principals have done different varieties of grade level, parent grade level types of meetings. So I think they're each approaching it in a slightly different way. And the good news is the PTOs kind of talk to each other. They have a little listserv where the PTO presidents all talk to each other about what's going on. So that was something that we started up this year just because it should have been true 5 years ago, but it's true now. And so I think some of those things have happened as well. I think the question that Meg's raising of just in terms of how to get she needs a little bit of time. I mean, first of all, you guys you've done such incredible work, Meg and Chris. I just can't even I won't even go into all the things again that the year and the $1 million and all that sort of thing. So just, thank you. I think once you kind of get the building blocks in place, trying to figure out, those pieces as well. And I know you're already having parent-wide Zooms, and you're already having sort of a number of those things. And I know a number of the teachers are checking in one-on-one with the parents. So I know those things are starting to happen, but you guys have some pretty big building blocks to get into place first. So I think,
Susan, you said it.
I'm sure that's on the list.
We can't wait to get to the other stuff that we need to get to. I mean,
Right.
the nuts and bolts need to be done in order to sustain us. We have to have a schedule in place. That schedule has been the bane of everyone's collective existence. And then every time you turn around, something else is going to change, and it's not going to work here, it's not going to work there. You find another bug, and it's back to the drawing board. So that has been challenging. I won't lie about that. But you're right. We want to get to the part where we talk about what is most important, right? And we need to really protect the social emotional health of our kids and of our parents. I'm worried about a lot of our families. I'm also worried as we go into the dark days of winter, what that does emotionally to people. I mean, we know there's a seasonal disorder, and I think that we all have, in Michelle Obama's words, a low-grade depression. I mean, I think that many people are suffering from, just a feeling of heaviness, perhaps not a depression, but a feeling of heaviness in this world as we navigate this world with masks on all the time. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of things that are going into it at this point. One more point about the teachers, and I will open it up to questions again, is that these teachers really that many of them haven't even met each other. And we've thrown them all together. They've been pulled together as a band of warriors of sorts that haven't had a lot of opportunity because, as we said, we're 15 days old. And so what's happened is one of my goals is I pull grade level meetings. So they give up part of their time to come and meet with me. So I've met with 5 of the grade levels so far, and just a small Zoom with just the 4 of them and myself. And one of them said to me today, thank you. I'm learning things about these people that I have only seen or whatever, that I never knew before. And because we're always talking, when we get together, we're talking about this, but I did some personal team building type skills a little bit. And I was grateful for her gratitude because it signals to me that this is important to them as well. And we need to be mindful of that. So.
Are there any other questions before we move back to the presentation that anyone else has? Or
We only have 2 slides left anyway, so, Jennifer, so don't worry about it.
No worries. I don't want to rush, questions that people have, and I want people to have time. Barbara, did you have any questions or comments? I think you're saying no. I'm not sure. I think. Okay, great.
So should I go back to the slides or?
Yeah, we only have the 2 slides left, really.
I mean, you don't have to put them up if you want to just talk them through us. I mean, that's okay too.
I want to put the last one up.
I promise Chris that we're going to do that. So I'm just, are you able to see the slide?
Yeah.
The in-process slide?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, we can.
So our PPS tomorrow, Meg, right? Yeah, no, Thursday. Today's only Tuesday. Holy moly. Seems like we put in 2 days today.
I know.
And we are initiating something that's critically important to everything. It's the child study team. And that will be on twice a month, Meg? We're going to do that twice a month?
Yes, at least twice a month, maybe every week. We don't know, but at this point, but we're going to try to do it twice a month right now.
So these are things that are immediately imminent for us. Immediately imminent is rather redundant, but you know what I meant. Creating classroom support, and we're going to try to continue to do that through these grade level meetings with teachers and having office hours. Meg held office hours last Friday, and a number of people showed up to have questions answered in that way, which is a really, I mean, normally people would be dropping by our offices, our physical offices. Teachers are always in principals' offices, and we love that, but we're missing that component. And then finalizing the open house calendar is imminent for us as well. So, I mean, as we said, we've got a lot of work to do. We feel as if, especially from Meg's perspective, again, I can only say 2 weeks here, that's it. But all the other work that all these other people have done is incredible to me. I'm really impressed with it as well. And I'll just do this one last slide, and then, because to us, this really synopsizes our philosophy of the RLA, and that it's learning is not attained by chance. It must be sought for with ardor and attended to with diligence. And if you unpack that, it doesn't just happen. It really, really has, you have to have a passion and an ardor for making learning happen, and you have to be extraordinarily vigilant and diligent to make it happen. I'm going to ask you if you have any guesses as to who might have said that. Beautiful saying.
I know.
I know, you know.
Benjamin Franklin, he always had.
Oh, you know what? That's such a good guess, Helen. I love that guess. It's not right, but I love that guess because it is of his ilk. It really is, you know, of his you know, mindset. He always had that as a mindset, that learning is something for which extraordinary ardor and passion must be recognized.
Not Horace Mann. Not Horace Mann. No.
Horseman, another, oh, Helen, you are spot on. Another.
Why do you think it's a male?
Okay, I'm done. I'm done.
Still not right, but good job. Okay, anybody else?
Keep on going, Helen. You're on a roll. I mean, you know, you must be.
Barbara has her hand up. Barbara has her hand
Thoreau.
up.
Who was it?
Thoreau.
Do you not love that man, Thoreau? I mean, he can write like nobody's business, but no. But again, a good guess.
My guess was way off. I was somewhere else. I was going to say Maya Angelou. It was very poetic. So
exactly, and Maya would be a good guess. And that's the first woman that has been mentioned. Okay, because we always tend to think of the men because they have. I'm very aware of gender issues. I think many of you are. I'm aware of all learners having their equal opportunity. But no, it's not. One last guess? Anybody? Joe? No. Okay. It's a woman. Okay. It's a woman who was an extraordinary, past tense, was an extraordinarily smart woman who stood by her man, not behind her man. She stood by, Joe's laughing at me, by her man on equal footing intellectually, in terms of decision making. Come on, am I giving you any good
Roosevelt, Eleanor.
She's a really good one, but go backwards in time a little bit.
Oh.
Abigail Adams.
Oh, yeah!
My office wall is coming down right now because we're right next to one another.
So yes, Abigail, is she, I mean, so that's how far back that saying goes. And to me, it really, really does give a summation of how we feel here at the RLA about learning and having that passion and the diligence. And I'm telling you, you guys have done a great job hiring these teachers and having Meg at the helm, and with the support of Michelle and Joe, and all the other, the world language coordinator, the science coordinator, the math coordinator, they're all phenomenal people. The art, everybody has been extraordinarily helpful and collaborative in this effort. I'm done. Anybody else have?
Barbara?
I hate to bring this up, but as of November 15th, you can have people requesting to come in or go out. And that seems to me unsettling in a lot of ways for the school itself. And I wondered what your thinking is about how to handle that movement.
Well, today on senior leadership, we actually started having, well, we've been having this conversation, but really starting to put meat on the bones in terms of what this might look like. The teachers are aware that we may have movement. And I think one of the things that the teachers are really good at and the staff is really good at is making people feel welcome, number one. And as I look at the Facebook page, what I see from our parents is that they're, for the most part, really enjoying having their children get to know kids from other schools. And they said, one parent said, this is a preview for high school. This is great, you know? So in that way, it's kind of a positive thing. I think so much of what children take are from their cues from adults. And so we have to model what it means to be in this school and welcoming kids. I think that we need to work with our staff once we have a better idea of, and we're going to know fairly soon, anticipating what these numbers may look like, what this may mean for their classrooms. And we were told today that if we have a large influx to a particular grade level, depending on what the process and procedures are, we may end up hiring another teacher. For instance, in 5th grade, we're 3 sections because our numbers were lower. So if we get more 5th graders, we may end up adding another teacher. But, you know, I think that and Joe and Michelle, you were at this meeting as well. So please chime in here in terms of, you know, what the thinking is.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we are certainly looking to create a process and make it clear to families what that process is. Should there be, you know, some kind of issue or conflict in terms of going back and forth. So we want to flesh that out a little bit before we talk about it publicly, but you know, we want to make sure that everyone understands all the parameters and what kind of you know, availability expectations sort of going forward, because we know it's been open to the community that this November date is out there in terms of options one way or another. We're also hoping that, you know, we know that kids get attached, right? So that they'll be attached to their teachers and to their class and will want to stay where they are. So we'll see what happens. And we'll be back in touch about that pretty soon, so.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Helen? Yes,
So-
Helen?
Yeah, when we originally talked about, you know, time period for RLA and back in the summer, I had suggested 6 months, not 3 months, because I think it's a better time period. One of the things that I just in listening to you and thinking about it, that I hope you're considering is that at this point, parents need to make a decision for the rest of the year. You know, barring any, you know, change in status or something like that, illness or something like that, that I think we need to, we can't afford to keep on hiring new teachers, you know, and then what do we do with the teachers we have? It becomes very, I mean, we're not that nimble. No school system is.
Right.
And so I think at some point we have to, and it probably has to come from the school committee, but I think we just need to say, you need to choose, and this is where you need to stay unless there's an extraordinary circumstance.
Well, kind of as we were thinking, you know, I understand how this was put out to the community, but now we're in reality, right? So in the reality of adding students to, you know, socially distanced spots in brick and mortar schools where we would then have to create additional spaces where there are no spaces. We've already come to that kind of conversation. You know, that impact is certainly great. So you know, but I don't know what was, you know, communicated or promised to the community. And, you know, we might need to talk about that a little more seriously as we go forward. So I think that Jim will be planning to share his thoughts with the, you know, with the committee, you know, for your thinking and discussion and final vote probably.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I do hope families, you know, can sort of put this in context and realize, you know, it's only a few weeks old at this point and it's just getting better and better and coming together. Yeah. So it's going to take some time to really, you know, get the full impact of the program. And so that's going to be tough if you're deciding in a few weeks and, you know, really giving it a chance, so to speak.
Well, the reality is that, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
That you know, if we allow this at each semester, children are going to have different teachers all year long.
And teachers are going to have to deal with different children. I mean, that becomes an impossible task.
Absolutely. It's already fairly impossible because we're asking them to, you know, learn how to teach one way and now learn how to teach another way. And now we're going to mix the kids up and, you know, try it again. So it'll be like the first day of school all year long.
Right. Groundhog Day.
Yeah. So that's a consideration, I think, that, you know, in the reality is probably different than, you know, trying to be as accommodating as, you know, is naturally you want to do when you're starting to think about an idea.
Suzanne, and then Susan.
Yeah, I wonder if we could talk about the special ed children and their needs. I mean, 120, that's about 20%, if I'm doing the math right, of your school, which is on the high end. And I'm wondering, you know, how much of that's inclusion and how that's working on a remote level. That seems a little confusing to me, but I just wonder if you could say a few words about that, how it's going.
Sure. This is where our paraprofessionals are so vital. We have our special education teachers that are some are at one particular grade level, some are spanning grade levels depending on the service needs of the children. And so when we initially received the received the you know, the children that we were going to have, we scheduled our students with special education and EL needs first to make sure that we could deliver services knowing that we were spanning all 8 schools. So for the students that get inclusion, paraprofessionals are really important because they may go into their class, they may require a little additional support. They work with their paraprofessionals do pull out too if a kid might need a little bit of extra help. They might create a room for a student to go in. We do have some students and some children that have one-to-one para that will get that kind of support from that para. So there's all different kinds of ways, and actually it might be really interesting, and you know, I would love to have some of our teachers come back and talk with you all about what this looks like in a remote setting, because it really is something. We're working very closely with Nadine Mall and Melissa Devine, our 2 special education directors who've been great on coordinating these services. And it's not been perfect. These first 3 weeks have been, because our schedule wasn't in place, our teachers have been champing at the bit to really get these services in and pulling students and really, and our parents and students have been very patient. Now that we have our schedule in place, it's going to be a lot easier, I'm hoping, you know, that we keep this consistent schedule so that kids get their services. I don't know if I answered your question, Suzanne.
Yeah, I just can imagine there's so many challenges. I didn't mean to leave out the EL students as well. That's actually quite high also.
It's very high. And we have 3 wonderful teachers who are meeting with our students, you know, on a regular basis now. So that they're pulling, we now have our EL classes up and running, so.
Are they doing pull-out services for the most part?
They are. For EL, we have classes where students are receiving individual services or classroom services in an EL classroom.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, is there a preponderance of one language group, or are they?
We have 3 different, according to Mindy, we have 3 different primary language groups in our school besides English speakers. We have Japanese, Korean, and Mandarin. So, I mean, yes, Japanese, Mandarin, and Korean. Yeah.
Interesting.
Susan, did you have a question?
No, it was more of a comment. I mean, we've been talking about budget all the way through, and I think, you know, Joe, to your point, we knew that this was going to be more chaotic to give people only a quarter rather than a full semester. So I think, for better or worse, we did know that. I think, can you hear me? It's coming in and out.
It's a little crackly.
Okay, I'll do my best. We did know that, for better or worse. I think we sort of at the point at which we had options that were not fully fleshed out, it was very difficult to imagine, especially those of us who were parents on the committee, even asking ourselves to make a commitment for 6 months, given the level of knowledge that we had at the time. And so I think it was, for better or worse, again, less about accommodating the parents and more about a recognition that just we weren't there. We weren't ready to give them enough information to make a 6-month commitment. I think going forward, I don't think it needs to be every quarter now that we're kind of, settling in, but we did have that conversation. So I think it'd be really helpful now that we've got some fresh eyes on it, like you, in particular, Joe, just to sort of think about what a rhythm or what a trade-off might look like. So just want to put a pin in that one. The only other thing I want to say is that if I were to think about what would this look like if we were fully staffed, not only would we have a principal and a vice principal or two co-principals or consulting principal for the RLA, but we would also have more resources at central office level to focus on educational pedagogy, right? And so we have ETSs and they're fantastic. We have help desk people and they're fantastic. What we don't have is sort of a former principal level, not quite a deputy superintendent, but even sort of a senior director for remote learning, district-wide. And it does seem to me that without a sufficient district-wide view of this, it's just going to be so much on every principal and Meg, and you're going to keep getting pulled in, and Scott's going to be asked to do 1,000 things that he can't do. Michelle's going to be asked to do things she can't do. So not only do we need to be fully staffed at teaching and learning, but we also probably need to think a little bit differently about how technology is organized at the district level, and also what kinds of resources we need. So again, in the past, it might have made a lot of sense to separate help desk and the educational technology pieces. They've been together, they've been apart. I think they're apart now, they've been together. So I think it's just really worth thinking about what is needed to fully support educators, both in their hardware, software, bandwidth types of needs, but also those kind of, more advanced skills of synchronous and asynchronous, or how do you bring, pedagogy, different pieces of pedagogy into sharper relief for different age groups and different kinds of subjects. So I just want to put a pin in that also, as more of just a comment than anything else, which is that, we have not really had a fully fledged conversation about, we're just trying to, do so much on the fly about just what does it look like to do this well, and what kinds of resources do we need, again, at central office and in our K-8s, and you're one of those, to pull it off. So I just want to name that. And say thank you for doing 17 jobs at once, at all hours of the night and morning. And I guess just a question for Jennifer. I mean, I'm not sure, we don't want to ask Meg and Chris to do this whole thing again. I think that's one of the principles that we've decided not to ask people to do presentations all the way, 2-hour discussion at subcommittee and then another 2-hour discussion at full committee. So I think I would just leave it in your hands and Suzanne's to think about how do we bring some of the richness of this information, at least summarize it. Most of us are here, but, summarize it, or, not asking Meg and Chris to create another document, but maybe we sort of take what these PowerPoint slides and turn it into, a memo. I don't know, but I just want to make sure we're not adding burden to Meg and Chris to get this out a little bit more widely. But I'm sure we'll figure that out.
Yeah, that's a great point. That it's one of my goals, and I think some members of the committee have also talked about this, that we don't want to be duplicating work, and we certainly don't want to duplicate presentations. And so Meg and Christine did prepare a presentation, which we could share with the other committee if you're so willing to share it with us, and we could have Robin share it around as well. The meeting is being recorded, so it's also possible for other members who want to access this in the future to also do that. That's not going to preclude an update, but I do know we have subcommittee presentations well, not presentations, but updates on the agenda for this Thursday's meeting. So we can certainly draw some highlights and draw attention to this recording for folks who are looking for something more immediate than waiting for something longer term, because I don't think we have any presentations scheduled for this Thursday's full school committee meeting. But it's certainly available to the community and members of the committee who are interested in the level of detail we were able to discuss tonight. We do want to be mindful of everyone's time. And so I know this is yet another thing on the list of things to be done, but it is greatly appreciated. I do think it's very helpful for the committee, the subcommittee, and the larger committee to really understand some of what's happening on the ground and to talk about the curriculum implications, because that is our big idea here, is sort of what's happening with the curriculum. And so I would love, and I think that Michelle is maybe going to come to our next meeting on the 20th to talk about, the curriculum impacts of, our pedagogical models going forward, and specifically, what does the hybrid look like, and what is that pedagogical model? Why are we choosing it? Why are we doing it the way that we're doing it? And talk about that at our next October 20th meeting. And I think we would love to have people come back in the future when things are, I don't know if there'll ever be a time when we have the time to do this, but when we can make time, maybe in December or January, or whenever it's appropriate, that we could maybe have, Hal and Anthony had offered to come back and talk with us about specific changes to the curriculum at a deeper level. Maybe Meg had mentioned maybe having some teachers come and talk to us about, some of that. We could certainly talk about that at a future time, but just getting this sort of really concrete information firsthand is really helpful. That being said, I am mindful of the time. It is 6:45. And so I would just like, unless anyone has any other questions or any staff want to, add anything on, I would love to. Oh, Suzanne does. So Suzanne, you're up.
Yeah, sorry, I just, can we just talk about the Medco students for a minute? There's, 46 feels like a good number, but they're so far away. It's not like some of your children in RLA can at least see their friends at soccer teams or neighborhoods, or maybe not, but the Medco students are, not in the community. And so I'm just wondering how they're doing, how they're interacting, how the families and how their technology is working for them. Not at length, but just a few words would be great.
Oh, Suzanne, I know, like we have a very special place in our hearts for Boston, and I will tell you that this past week, Dr. Lozama is just amazing, and he's mobilized his MECO staff, and they're starting to show up in RLA classrooms, and the children are so excited, along with our Steps to Success advisors. So, and equally excited are our staff members, because these are the advisors from MECO work in their schools, and so we have familiar friends. We've heard, for the most part, the technology for our MECO families is working well. We have not, and with Bob now on board, Scott and Bob have done an amazing job. Before Bob came on board officially, he was, helping us out. So, but we've been addressing the technology right away. I do think that we're going to be talking about other ways of helping the children connect, because as you know, Keith has done a lot around community building and integrating our families into activities that happen both in Boston and in Brookline. So how does that look in a remote setting? So that's definitely on our agendas moving forward. But just want you to know that there are familiar faces showing up to support families at the school, and people are really grateful and very happy.
Thank you for that work. It's important.
It's so important. And you know what? The bottom line is, every single person on this panel right here, it's all about the kids. Bottom line, it's always about the kids. So Suzanne, thank you for going out to, sometimes the kids get on the periphery a little bit. So we want to make sure that that's all, they're all tucked in together. But thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, this is great. Thank you so much for coming tonight and taking your time out of your lives in the evening. help us. And I know it takes time to get prepared. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you for coming tonight to share with us. Thank you so much.
You are most welcome, and I'll be replaying this. I live in Falmouth, so I'll have a little bit of a drive home, but I get to replay this in my head, and I always think, oh, maybe we could have said there, so maybe we could describe this a little bit better. So we are open, to taking your questions if you have, as you have our contact information, and I know we'll speak for Meg as well in terms of, this is important. This is important work. So.
Yeah, thank you. It's an incredibly important and new task, right? So you're uncharted territory, so to speak. So thank you all. Have a lovely rest of your evening, which I'm sure will be very full and busy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks so much.
Good night, everybody. Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.